get out of your comfort zone. In life there will be challenges, testing whether you weak or strong. So don't let obstacles deter you. Just shake up yourself and move on, I tell you. Out of your comfort zone. You know that life is a mixture of the good, the bad and ugly. So don't stress yourself over issues that won't change your reality, I tell you. Out of your comfort zone. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have greatness in you. Yes, you have greatness in you. I know that you have greatness in you. Oh, oh, oh. You have greatness in you.
Oh, thank you very much, Brother John Caliste. It is a pleasure to be back on the GEM FM radio platform in 2021, a brand new year. I'm not certain whether I do qualify for the title that you just bestowed upon me, but in any event, that's neither here nor there. And I'm really hoping that I can do justice, to what you just mentioned, that I'm going to really have the people going this afternoon. I'm going to do my best to live up to the accolade that you've bestowed upon me here this afternoon. My name is Raphael Paul. Most everybody call me Pablo. Those of you who've been regular guests on GEM FM would be very much, aware of who I am. Brother John referred to me as, referred to Sunset City. I usually say that I have dual citizenship, so I have citizenship for Victoria, Sunset City, but I also have citizenship for Guave, the tongue that never sleeps, the fishing capital of Grenada. I cannot, I cannot discount, that I cannot discount that relationship and that connection. So it's my pleasure to say Happy New Year and welcome to those of you who've been here before. And those of you who are here, please share the live, share it so that others may be privy to what's happening on GEM FM. We did have a very good first program for the year last night. It wasn't the comfort zone. It was John Caliste's talking point, and it was a very good one. You can go online and access it. We had a very good conversation about happenings in Grenada, namely the issue with the Grenlec situation. And you will be hearing a bit more of that here this afternoon, because this program today is going to be done a little differently to how it's been done previously, because of usually those of you who've been here before would know that I would have a guest or guests, and we just get straight into that conversation. But this afternoon we have there are two different elements to this afternoon's program. And the first component of it would be a component that I call points of reflection. Excuse me. Because there are so many things that impact on our lives in one way or another, whether personally, whether it is in our community, our nation, and in the world at large, because things that are happening globally do impact on our personal lives in one way or another. So I want to share some of those things with you, share on issues that's relevant to the conversation on our development that's taking place in Grenada presently. So I want to share some of these things with you before we get into what I consider to be the main event for this afternoon, where I'll be having 4 guests. Yeah, 4 guests will be joining me. I expected to join me at about 3 p.m. this afternoon or just thereafter for us to have a very important conversation. And I'll be telling you what that is a little later on in the program. So to begin with, points of reflection, let me just tell you, it is New Year's, okay? It is a brand new year. And as such, I want to start by having a bit of a conversation on our New Year's resolution. And there is a clip that Brother John has that's called Development. And to get the conversation going, I want to play that clip to sort of set the tone. So, because that clip really speaks to where many of us are at this stage in the year, because it is typical of us to be making New Year's resolutions. And oftentimes, sometime before the first week is out, we would have been guilty of breaking some of those resolutions. And it's broken once, and we break it again, and we break it again. And by the middle of the year, you don't, you know, it's like you never had any resolutions whatsoever for the new year. So I want to start off with this clip that Brother John is going to play for us that is going to set the tone for this conversation. It's called Development. Brother John.
Life is based upon transformation, disruptions, and miracles. Transformation, disruptions, and miracles. And when we look at our lives right now, we're still going through a transformation. The way that we've been living and the way that we have carried ourselves in the past, can't do that now. And you got to keep it moving. You can't stay where you are. You can't stay there. You can, but you don't want to stay there. As you think about yourself and think about the new person that you're going to become, pretty soon people will be saying, Happy New Year. Well, the truth of the matter is there cannot be a Happy New Year until there's a new you. Got to be a new you. And so I want, in order for that to happen, for you to radically change your life, for this coming year, 2021, to be dramatically different for you, I want you to write down, what are you going to release? Now, I'm going to share with you some of the things that I'm going to release. Number one is procrastination. Starting today, I should have had my book recorded already, and I've been putting it off. But let me share with you what motivated me. Here's something that I wrote down last night. Put off the things that you are okay with dying in you today. Whoa! I said, whoa! I'm not okay with my book dying in me today. I'm not okay with that. Put off for tomorrow that which you are okay with dying in you today.
Yes. Are you willing to put off something, or are you able to identify things that you would feel okay that if you were to die with them today? Are there things that you would want to accomplish that you genuinely want to see come to fruition, but you have been putting it off? There you have Les Brown. This is the right honorable, and the term that Brother John used earlier on, that in reference to me, honorable. This is the honorable Les Brown, one of the world's greatest motivational speaker, one of the world's greatest motivator. He trains people in motivation. And there you have Les Brown indicated that he himself is challenged in that way. It tells you that irrespective of who you are going to be challenged in terms of realizing your dreams, in terms of living up to your own commitments. And he is on record as saying, keep your commitments to your commitments. Oftentimes we give commitments and we don't keep the commitments to the commitments that we give. And I am telling you, I am just beginning to emerge from one of those phases that I have been going through, that I have gone through throughout my life, where, you heard the opening clip that was played, the song that was played, you have greatness in you, get out of your comfort zone. And that's one of my traits, that's one of my weaknesses, where when faced with certain challenges, in spite of the people who is in my corner, the people who's there willing to lend the support to see me through, I have the tendency to withdraw into my comfort zone. And it takes some time. It takes some recuperating. I've just been through one. I'm telling you, I must confess, I have just been through one of these. Well, I can't say I've been through. I'm just emerging from one of these. Over the past few weeks, I've been coming here on Saturdays up to the 19th of December, doing the Comfort Zone program and so. And no one knows that how I come out from the program, I go back into my little comfort zone. And there's been people who's been trying to reach me who's been unable to do so because Pablo is in one of those, one of those states. And we experience these things from time to time. But as Les Brown say, you cannot say Happy New Year unless there is a new you. And you have to be prepared to embrace that new you. You have to, and in order to embrace that new you, you must first acknowledge that old you and appreciate what that old you really embodies. And how do you get from that stage that Les Brown just referred to, of that procrastination? Because when you do that, sometimes the people that are there for you, the people that are in your corner, ready to help, to hold you up, to support you, and you withdraw for them, you hurt these people. They feel let down. And they're there trying to reach out, and you're in your comfort zone. So I'm telling you, I appreciate what it is, and many of us, it is what caused us to not live up to our New Year's resolutions. And as such, the year comes and the year goes, and we do not accomplish the things that we really, in our heart's desire, want to accomplish, the type of people that we really and truly want to become. And we know we like Les Brown said, you're not supposed to stay there. You may want to, but you shouldn't. So if the great motivator can be faced, a man who motivates and trains thousands of people around the world, people of all ethnic backgrounds, people of all social and financial backgrounds, a man who has spoken at the Georgia Dome in front of 80,000 people, a man who was labeled educable, mentally retarded, but grew to become the world's greatest motivational speaker. A man who at one point in time, in one stage of his development, said that he was going to speak to all the great corporations in the world, and he was told that he's suffering from delusion. But he did it. He made it. And now the whole world listens to him. And in spite of that fact, he is faced with challenges of procrastination. So don't feel badly when you're faced with such situations. Just remember that it's imperative that you get out of your comfort zone, because there is a comfort zone out there waiting for you. Because as it's been said, sometimes we face God-blessed opportunities, but it's brilliantly disguised as problems and challenges. But we embrace the problems and the challenges much more than we reach for the God-blessed opportunities that's waiting out there. You know, and a story come to mind that I heard Les Brown share. I don't know if it was, I don't remember whether it is original, but he spoke, and I may have mentioned it some time ago on a previous program, where he spoke about this man that had been captured and was told that he would be executed in the morning. So he had two options: face execution in the morning, or to go through a particular door. And he wanted to know what's behind the door. But because he was not told what was behind the door, or he was told, well, it's endless horrors out there. Well, endless horrors, you're still alive. The other option was to be executed, to go before the firing squad. But he didn't go through the door. He chose to go before the firing squad. So the next morning he was executed. And when the commander was asked, so what's behind the door? He said, freedom. So sometimes our freedom is waiting on us just outside the door, but we don't take the measure to step out. And so let's not remain in our comfort zones this year, starting with me. You know, as I said, I'm just emerging from one of those situations. Brother John didn't even know that. Brother John didn't even know that I've been here and we're having conversations on a Saturday and so, and then I come on a Friday and I host his talking point because of the conditions that he's been dealing with. I host his talking point program and I go back into my little comfort zone. So, you know, I just wanted to share this, and I just wanted to let people know that at this stage where we are making our New Year's resolutions, that we have to be prepared and willing to go the extra mile. And sometimes it's not about, listen, there are many studies right now that's being done about these things. What causes people to not live up to their own expectation? What causes people to not live up to commitments that they give? There's studies being done about these things right now, you know, and they are devising different approaches which they feel can enable people to live up to the expectations or to live up to the conditions that they have set for themselves, you know. And there's one study where they say how to keep the New Year's resolution, and you know, they've put people through different processes, and so, and one of the things that they say is your focus shouldn't be on what it is that you want to stop doing, but more on what you want to do, more of what you intend to do. So they use an example. If you're somebody who's overweight and into eating the wrong foods, and you know, well, the chocolate bars and whatever else is not good for you, and you don't focus on, I want to quit chocolate. You focus on something. What are you, okay, I'm going to quit chocolate, but what am I going to replace it with? So you focus on, instead of chocolate, I am going to do X, or I'm going to do Y. So you focus on the goal that you set yourself rather than the place that you're trying to leave from. So your eyes then is on the prize rather than that situation that have caused you not to be a winner of the prize. You know, and as I said, there are many studies that's being done on these issues in order to get people motivated, because one can be motivated for a moment and everything's going fine and so on, and you've got things looking good. And I can tell you that in spite of all that's been going on with 2020 and the downturn in different areas and people being faced with different challenges, and so I can say that 2020 was good to me. Yeah, is in 2020 I end up on the comfort, I end up on Gem FM and end up on the comfort zone. Is in 2020 I am here out on this platform. Is in 2020 this has happened. And this is one of the best things that has happened to me. And me being here, doing what I am doing something that I really enjoy doing. Is in 2020 that things that I produce, my leather craft and so, became more known and became more established than it's ever been before. And since COVID-19 started, I haven't been without orders, as has never happened before. And it's provided a platform for launch of. And I was just saying to a friend of mine that I haven't capitalized on some of the opportunities that came my way in 2020 as much as I should have, or as much as I could have. And that is to be corrected here and now. You know, I can tell you there's somebody who's, you know, that's been a part of my life from like forever, that I hadn't connected with in quite a while, and we reconnected and we've developed a very strong rapport, and they've had my back and been encouraging me and pushing me. And then I came to that place and I just withdrew. And the birthday is in November. They didn't hear from me in November. They didn't hear from me for Christmas. And they haven't heard from me. And, you know, you're there and you wonder, how do I reach out to that person now at this point in time? You know? Now that person, because they've had my back, they've been listening to the comfort zone and urging me on and egging me on. I would hope that they're listening presently. So, get out of your comfort zone. Let's stop procrastinating. Let's reach for. Let's reach for the skies, because if you miss it, you could land among the stars. You know, the skies are unlimited. So you land among the stars, you're right out there. Les Brown said it. Stop procrastinating. If you really want to accomplish and to live up to your New Year's resolution, you know, this is where you really need to be. Get out of your comfort zone. Brother John, I want you to line up this extended version of comfort zone that I call comfort zone special. And people, I want you to be, you know, understand it is incomplete work, right? It is work that's in the making. You have been hearing this little clip from part of the chorus, and I want you to hear a little bit of the verses in it, so you get a greater appreciation of the message in that song. As I said, it's incomplete work, it's not the final voicing, it's not been mixed, but I think the quality is still reasonably okay to share with the listeners. So comfort zone special, Brother John. Let's share it with the listener.
You have greatness in you. Yes, you have greatness in you. You have greatness in you. Oh, oh, oh. You have greatness in you. Now you have the potential for excellence, but you just afraid to take a chance to leave your tabernacle of comfort and develop what is in your heart. I say afraid that whatever you try might fail, and the efforts that you make will be to no avail. You're afraid you'll have to face complication, embarrassment and threat of rejection. But there's opportunity waiting on you out there for you to come knocking, so you could have your share. I tell you, get out of your comfort zone. In life there will be challenges, testing whether you're weak or strong. So don't let obstacles deter you. Just shake up yourself and move on. I tell you, out of your comfort zone. You know that life is a mixture of the good, the bad and ugly. So don't stress yourself over issues that won't change your reality. I tell you, out of your comfort zone. You have to get out of your comfort zone. Because there is no guarantee things will work out how you want it to be. You're afraid you wouldn't have any success. Just the thought of that causing you stress, and you decide to settle for the hell that you know, while your taste of heaven waiting outside the door. I tell you, get out of your comfort zone. If you don't take any chances, nothing will work out for you. Every successful person, that's just what they had to do. I tell you, get out of your comfort zone. Only when you make the effort, that's when you will begin to see that you have to do some knocking to open doors of prosperity. I tell you, get out of your comfort zone. No, no, no. Get out of your comfort zone.
Brother John, what's your verdict? Yeah.
I listened to the Les Brown, the original tape on the man who was captured behind enemy lines. Mm-hmm. All right, and for a lot of us, we are captured behind enemy lines even now. All right, mm-hmm. And our freedom is to release our procrastination and our fear. All right, this is what imprisons most of us. Is our fear and procrastination and self-doubt, self-pity, what people think about us if we go out and do what we have to do. See, many of us become graveyards to our dreams. We bury it inside of us. We don't want to give it out. You know? So we become the embodiment of the cemetery. And if you listen to that same speech, Les Brown spoke of the wealthiest place on the planet is not in the oil wells in Saudi Arabia and the diamond and gold mines in Africa. The wealthiest place on the planet is in the cemetery. There you will find dreams that was never acted upon. But he said this one thing. Imagine for a moment lying on your deathbed, and all your gifts and talent, while your family and friends pray and kind of pray with you before you make that transition out of life itself, and up come your gifts and talent, saying, look at you. We came with you. Only you could have given us life. No, you dying, we have to die with you. And isn't that sad? That your gift and talent that God gave you, some of us trace other people's dream and not theirs. They want to be like Pablo. They want to be like that person and never be themselves. They become a cemetery. They entomb their dreams and they never leave. So this whole episode that you just played there, I hope that people, not only today but tomorrow, will listen to this again and give life. Do the resurrection. 2021 is a resurrection year for many people. Resurrect the dead things in you. That should be given life. Let that life live. Leave. Don't exist, but live. Too much of us existing and not living life. You know, and you spoke of yourself. And even the song that I just played there, you say incomplete. But I have a paper here, Pablo. My last year's, all my things, my top 10, 15 things for last year is on this side. And on this side, I have a few things that I said. A statement of confirmation for myself. Ask, and it shall be given unto you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Yeah? And I say, let thy kingdom come. Let thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven in my life. See? So, you said that I didn't know what you're going through. Let me tell you something. Sometimes I know thing, but don't say anything. Let me tell you something. The Spirit already talked to me, and when I call you, the Spirit already tell me, this man have greatness in him. Got to pull it out of him. Bring him out. You know, he lived in the shadows for too long. Time for him to come out and live his life. Don't exist. Live. And that's when I called you the evening on my way from work in the car. I wasn't sitting home. I was in my car and I said, call Pablo now and offer him this show. And here you are. So, that's show number 18. It is?
No,
18.
This is show number 21.
21 in 2021.
Show number 21. The first one in 2021.
2021. So Pablo, here you are. You have emerged out of the dead. You know what I'm saying? You have now given life last year and you emerged out again. You come out. You have become that which you're supposed to be. You know? And there's greater things to happen. You know, and last week before we talked about the value of you, you know, how valuable you are. You understand? So it's all of that encompass who you are. Once you know your value, fear have no dominion over you. Procrastination have no dominion over you. Self-pity have no dominion over you. What other people's negative thought about you is, doesn't matter. And Les Brown said, and you know it now, by now, never let nobody's negative opinion of you becomes your reality. You understand? So I'm saying to you today, don't let nobody negative opinion of you becomes your reality. Your reality is living your dreams. That which you have been impregnated with. Bring it out. Give birth to it today. Don't talk to the abortionists. They have no interest in giving life to your dream. You know, talk to the people, you know, that giving you the opportunity to help you, the midwife, so to speak, to help you give birth to your dream. Talk to the midwife, the real midwife that will say, hey, bring that baby out. We're going to help you nurture it. And Jimmy family will be there to help you out. Bring this baby to fruition. You know, don't be afraid. Step out. Don't force yourself in shallow waters when there's deep water to swim in. Okay. So it's all good. It's all good. I love it. I love it.
Get out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, man. And get into the comfort zone.
This is a song that I composed a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it really speaks to, you know, what I have been internalizing.
Right.
What I have internalized, the observations.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes out of the fact that I had been listening to Les Brown for some time now, you know, and the message that's coming from Les Brown really speaks to one in a way that encourages them and nurtures in them, you know, that desire to put their creative energies into the best use possible. And as I said, I've been taking steps and retreating, and sometimes you are faced with certain things, and instead of really dealing with it, instead of addressing it, you know, you retreat when you ought not to. That's a thing that many people are guilty of, and that's why I felt I wanted to start the year speaking to that issue.
Right.
Okay. As I said, we quickly coming up to 3 o'clock when our guests are due to join us, and there's another point of reflection that I want to touch on. It is a major talking point. Generally, we had a lot of it taking place with the Black Lives Matter issue and so on, and people tend to take certain things in a vacuum, but I just want to share a little bit here that demonstrate that this thing is much more broad-based than we're looking at. So, Brother John, if you have gate killers line up here for us, I think it really sets the tone for the point that I want to make. I do not want to spend as much time with it. It's something that I intend to speak to a bit more, and seeing as next month is going to be Black History Month, I intend to get a little more into that line of conversation. But if you can play Gate Killers for us. Cool. Yeah.
They also have this terminator gene or this genetic use restriction technology to stop African farmers from regrowing their food for next season. So here is the problem. Many Zimbabweans think that Zimbabwe is not able to produce food now because of the drought and because farms were taken from white farmers and given to black farmers. That is not the truth. The truth is Zimbabweans are failing to produce because it used to cost a Zimbabwean farmer, a small-scale black farmer in Zimbabwe, 0 cents and just labor to produce a hectare of food. But today, these Zimbabwean farmers were persuaded by companies like Seedco to get rid of their traditional seeds that used to be able to reproduce, and they were given these hybrids that do not reproduce or that continue to have reducing reproduction until they stop reproducing. Now the Zimbabwean farmer doesn't have that seed that can reproduce, so every season the Zimbabwean farmer must go and buy new seeds. And these hybrids do not just grow, but they need fertilizers and chemicals to make them grow. So the Zimbabwean farmer must buy new seeds every season, fertilizer and pesticides to protect these hybrids. So now to produce a hectare in a village costs a farmer nothing less than $250 to buy the seeds together with the fertilizer for him to grow the food. This is a problem that is causing Zimbabwe to lose its food self-sufficiency. And the problem is that all the PhD graduates, master's degree graduates, and graduates that are teaching our people how to farm in Zimbabwe come from an education system created by the very same organizations in America that are selling these hybrid seeds and chemicals. So that's why we are in a cycle where we continue to produce food unsustainably in Zimbabwe, listening to graduates. Right now, the permanent secretary of agriculture in Zimbabwe, I think his name is John Basera, came from this company called Seedco that is owned by Lima Grain of France, while Lima Grain of France is owned by Monsanto, the American company that is the biggest producer of GMOs and chemicals that are used in farming. These very same organizations work with an institution in which Strive Masiwa was the chairman, that is called AGRA, that belongs to the Rockefeller Foundation, together with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to control food in the world and to ensure that Africa comes into food colonialism.
Wow.
This institution was started by Kofi Annan so that they could get the trust of Africans to control African food and to put Africa into food colonization. The main reason I speak against Strive Masiwa is because he is bringing food colonialism to Africa through these GMOs, hybrids, and all this that they call agricultural technology of chemicals that destroys our soils and destroys Africa's ability to reproduce food. These are the things that we are supposed to start talking about when we are talking about emancipation of Africa and economic emancipation of Africans. There is no independence in Africa if your food is controlled by the Americans, the Swiss, and the Germans. Pass this message to every African. Make them understand that it is important to maintain traditional seeds. It is important to eat only food that has got seeds so that you have the ability to reproduce your food. There is no other bigger message about economic emancipation that beats this. And that is why our organizations, Zimbabwe Unite Against U.S. War Sanctions, or ZWAUS, is working to preserve traditional seeds and working to promote non-GMO food so that we can begin to grow our non-GMO farmers, organic farmers, and destroy GMO farmers. Do not take advice from Europeans, from white people on this issue of food, because they want you to remain colonized by their foods.
Wow.
So
Wow. I'm saying wow. I'm saying
you
wow.
see how much this whole issue of food is tied in with the whole issue of white supremacy.
Yes, yes.
And the manner in which the financially powerful, the economically privileged decision makers, these so-called philanthropists, because you hear the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they are involved in that.
Yeah.
But they are being paraded as the lifesavers of the third world.
They're not.
Yeah?
Sorry, but they're
They're
not.
being paraded as the lifesavers of the third world. And it makes you wonder, and it makes you question, what is the agenda with this COVID-19 and the compulsory vaccine program that is being pushed upon us, where there is no talk about treatment. What do you do if you become infected?
Listen to
But
me.
we have to wait until we get a vaccine. The Rockefeller Foundation, Bill Gates is some family
To the Rockefeller. Wait up.
to the Rockefeller. They're all involved in this whole enterprise.
Yeah.
And the next clip I want to play, the one that's called Rockefeller Power, because John Rockefeller lived many years ago, but it tells you certain decisions that were made then that is impacting on the situation today. And that's the reason why I say next month, as we get into Black History Month, I'll be speaking more to that. Because those people who are older that have spoken on these issues, the white power structure, they tend to try to demonize these people. The doctors who are older telling you what's going on with some of the vaccines that's being produced, even outside of this COVID-19 episode.
Yep.
They are being demonized. And the people, what makes Bill Gates, this this expert on biological vaccines and viruses and so on, what makes him that we are ready to
surrender?
Put aside? Yeah, we are ready to put aside and disrespect the doctors who's been in this for 20 odd years and so, to discredit them and to take the word of Bill and Melinda Gates, people that's involved with Monsanto, yeah, people that's involved with this operation. I mean, I know we used to have seeds here that we plant and we grow and we get the seeds and we save it and so. Now, even our own farmers in Grenada are already in that state. We have already begun to lose some of our generic seeds and so. Yes. You know, and they have you focused now on those so-called
GMO foods.
Whatever. Those so-called corrupt politicians in Africa. Yes, they are corrupt politicians in Africa, but what they are doing to those African economies is peanuts compared to what is being robbed from Africa, generally speaking. And they have you not focused, and they use established organizations like the World Trade Organization, WHO,
all set up by them,
Nations, and so, and it is our own academics.
Yes. That been
our own academics
recuted,
that used against us. You know, Brother John, I want you to play this one, Rockefeller Power.
I just to support that point that you made, even with the vaccine. I'm sorry, but I still didn't get time to send that thing to you. But the vaccine, my wife is in the nursing fraternity, and they advise her that if she take that, she can't get pregnant. She won't be able to get pregnant for 6 months. So go figure that out. Okay? She's cautioned that she should not get pregnant in that period of time. Right? So, because the impact of this vaccine could be devastating. All right? That's it. They have no idea of what harm it could be doing to anybody. You understand? So again, we are forced into taking. They say in Toronto, they say, okay, you're not forced to take it, but there might be consequences for you, right? That you might be able to travel, you might go to certain business places, and so on and so on. So even though they tell you it's okay, it's not mandatory, it is in a way, you know. So that's what they're doing. And the Bill and Melinda Gates, as the speaker in the previous thing said, who are these people? Like I said, who are these people to really dictate to us how to live? I mean, they're talking about they're recruiting the best minds from among us, educate us and send us back to our homelands to implement their philosophies, their theologies, their everything. And we're so proud of Pablo come back here, a PhD, have a master's degree in agriculture, but he was schooled by the enemy. Malcolm X made a point, why allow the enemy to educate your children? All right, let me play the clip.
Yes.
All right, the Rockefellers.
Okay.
Come on, Rockefeller. Okay, there you go.
Around the same time that John D. Rockefeller seized U.S. media, he also hijacked U.S. medicine. When it was discovered that drugs could be produced from petroleum, America's top oil mogul ordered his army of propagandists to invert reality accordingly. Medicines used for thousands of years were suddenly classified as alternative, while the new, petroleum-based, highly addictive, and patentable drugs were declared the gold standard. After buying a German pharmaceutical company that manufactured chemicals of war for Adolf Hitler, Rockefeller leveraged his political influence by pressing Congress to declare natural healing modalities unscientific quackery. Rockefeller then took control of the American Medical Association and began offering massive grants to top medical schools under the mandate that only his approved curriculum be taught. Any mention of the healing powers of herbs, plants, and diet was erased from most medical textbooks. Doctors and professors who objected to Rockefeller's plan were crucified by the media, removed from the AMA, and stripped of their license to teach and practice medicine. Those who dared to speak out were arrested and jailed. When evidence began to emerge that petroleum-based medicines were causing cancer, Mr. Rockefeller founded the American Cancer Society, through which he suppressed that information. John D. Rockefeller is duly credited as the founder of the pharmaceutical industry, and the reason that medical error is currently the third leading cause of death in America. This is not an indictment against doctors. More than anyone, they are under the stranglehold of the single largest lobbying power in Washington. Every year, the pharmaceutical industry spends at least twice the amount as big oil to influence laws, policies, and public perception. Thanks to Mr. Rockefeller, the architect of American monopolies, no industry has more power over our lives than Big Pharma.
Brother John, you see what we're living under, what we are faced with?
Yeah.
We grew up, when we were growing up, many of our elders barely went to the doctor. Many of our elders had lots of healing stuff.
Yes, sir.
That were used. Now the science is confirming that many of these things have great health and healing potential and capabilities. But it was not to be accepted until the Western power source says that it is so.
Yeah.
You just heard it there. It was discredited. People were, there's doctors in court of what is called alternative medicine who were dragged before the court.
Yeah.
And it's happening up to today.
Man, Dr.
Sebi was,
yeah.
It's happening up to today. That they are discrediting these people in alternative medicine. The FDA doesn't even certify these things.
No.
Yeah? And so it's left unregulated, and as a consequence of that, you find speculators and other questionable characters, dubious characters, getting involved and doing all sorts of things and putting all kind of wrong things out there. You know?
And they're making you feel that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
So you're crazy, you're disoriented, they bring all kind of things from your past, your childhood days to discredit you. Even though you're far gone beyond these days, and you'll become better, you're doing great works. You have been in the research business for 20 odd years. Look, man, when I got the COVID and I went to the hospital there, they said, okay, they sent me back home. They said, okay, 12 hours later, they said, yes, you're positive, but no medical treatment, okay? I left on my own, right, to die if it be, right? All the checking to make sure that you remain confined to your home and don't go anywhere. They make 2 phone calls to me, I didn't answer the phone. They showed up at my house, right, to make sure I'm home. If I wasn't home, they would take me away, and that's $10,000 fine, okay? Thank God for my wife, who used vitamin B, C, and zinc. We also have my 2 days, twice per day, head steaming with peppermint oil, eucalyptus oil, ginger and lemon in water, to inhale that twice a day, and then take a steam bath once a week. All right? And rub with the Vicks and everything. Do that every day for 2 weeks, 3 weeks straight up. And brought me back to good health. All right? Breathing and everything like that. I'm saying to you, there is natural healing for COVID. You don't need the vaccine. You understand? Cuba have a vaccine, but they wait until they bring theirs out before the World Health Organization recognize Cuba's own. Because Cuba is a little island in the Caribbean. We will produce a vaccine before the big multinational corporation could have done it. And their own is free to all Cubans and cheaper on the world market than what they have. So they did not approve the Cuban one until after American own came on the market. Hurriedly, unprepared, untested, in a big way. All right? So here you have a vaccine from a Caribbean island that works with no side effects whatsoever. Right? But they want to use it in America. They don't use it in England. They don't use it in the big G7 nations, the Caribbean country. But we have to support our own. I hope our governments in the Caribbean will defy the Uncle Sam's and the British and the French and the German, and let us use what we have in the Caribbean. Cuba has been able to educate a lot of our doctors and our scientists in the Caribbean today. Let us stand by that, and let us like eat what we grow what we eat in the Caribbean. Don't take in from them, because they don't have our best interests. They want to depopulate the earth, and if they could starve us by giving us the food when they want to feed us, because the genetic food seeds come from them. If they said to not supply us with it, we could starve. But we have to learn to use our traditional crops to feed ourselves. Don't depend on them for food, to feed you. Because anybody could feed you, they could stop feeding you. It's a given. And if we depend on them to feed us, we could be in a whole lot of trouble. So in next clip, Pablo?
Yes, toxic.
Toxic. Coming up.
Some of the vaccines and the ingredients in the vaccines we've heard about could be aluminum, could be mercury. Is there some concern that when these ingredients are given to such young children that as we've heard, their immune systems are not completely developed yet, if it stays in their system and or stays in their brain and does not come out of their system, as what we've heard is it's supposedly supposed to leave their system? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you heard earlier that there's no real concern about aluminum because it's such a small amount, and so it really shouldn't matter. But the kind of aluminum that we put into vaccines is a different kind of aluminum that we see environmentally. This is called a nanoparticle, and nanoparticles bind really tightly to the bacteria antigens, the virus antigens, the food protein antigens, and any other contaminants that are in the vaccines that we may not know about. And we know that the biochemical properties of nanoparticles is that they are capable of entering the brain. And so we have not evaluated the safety of the aluminum nanoparticle and its injection and where it goes when it gets into the body and whether it gets into the brain. Do vaccine ingredients belong in the brain? No. Do they get into the brain? No one has ever studied it. But animal studies using the same chemicals that are in vaccines that we give to children directly demonstrate that the vaccine ingredients do enter the brain. We are ignoring this information. There are scientists in Europe who've actually done studies on the aluminum nanoparticle and have shown that it can persist in the brain for years and decades. And so what we're seeing is a large outbreak of neurodevelopmental disabilities in adults, including Alzheimer's. And one of the main factors that they're finding in the brains of people with Alzheimer's is the aluminum nanoparticle that's directly related to the vaccines that we're giving. So we have never studied whether the aluminum that we're giving in vaccines gets into the brain, and we've never measured whether it stays in the brain and what it does if it does stay in the brain. But we do know that vaccines are supposed to cause inflammation in the body. But we have more than half of our children with chronic inflamed conditions. And we've never allowed ourselves to ask the question, if the vaccines cause inflammation acutely, do they continue to create inflammation chronically? We have 1 in 5 with neurodevelopmental disabilities, 1 in 10 with ADD and ADHD, 1 in 35 with autism, 1 in 11 with asthma, and 1 in 20 under the age of 5 with seizures. And the autoimmune diseases are exponentially rising, and we are finding that the viruses and the bacteria that we're injecting into the body, along with the adjuvants, create something called molecular mimicry, which means the body sees those viruses thinking that it's foreign, but actually finds pieces of those viruses that match pieces of the self. And the immune system doesn't differentiate between what it's been told to reject and itself. So it will turn the immune system on itself, leading to an autoimmune condition. We know this about hepatitis B, we know it about the Gardasil vaccine, and we know it about the flu vaccine. And we continue to say unequivocally that the vaccines have been studied effectively and that they're safe, and that's just not true.
So, there you have it. I mean, there is so much more. This is a doctor, he was testifying before the Connecticut authorities, I believe. And his name is Dr. Larry Palevsky, and he has 21 years plus of experience in that field. And you should have heard the more extended version of this, where the politician was questioning him. A politician who admitted that he is not a doctor, but because of his background, because of his financing, he was there trying to dispute the evidence and the information that was being presented by a doctor with 21 years experience. So when you begin to live in a world where you are being taught and you are being conditioned and you are being programmed to not appreciate and to not accept the information that is coming from the experts in the field who's been there for decades, and you're being conditioned to accept the word of a philanthropist who is more interested in making money, because when you dig deeper, you've seen that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they have been giving more monies to those companies that will now be able to, or be placed in a position where they will be able to get into this market. Africa is a big market. Yeah? They will be able to get in there into the market with the GMOs and with all of the different medical supplies, you know, the pharmacologists and so. It's all about that. I mean, the information is there. Right? And the questions are not being asked by certain people because of who's pushing it. The clip before indicated to you what Rockefeller did. Right? He didn't just get into the pharmacies. He made sure he controlled the media. The media is the one who really dictates how people think, what people accept, what they don't, their values, the way they analyze things and everything.
If you control the media, you control the people, man.
This is where we are right now. You know, this is where we are right now. But as I say, there's much more that can be said, and we will be speaking. I will be speaking more about that in the future. There's another issue that I wanted to get into, but time is of essence. I have to leave it alone because two of our main guests are here, and this other component of our conversation this evening is the one that is really more critical. Yes, it is more critical, that I consider to be the main event. Main
event.
I consider it.
I like that. Main event.
The main event. So just before we get into the main event for this evening, I'm expecting 2 more people to join us. Before we get into the main event, if Brother John can line this one up that I call Cancel It. It's another bit of unfinished work, you know, and if you can just share this one before we get into the main event for this evening.
All right.
It's called Cancel It.
Coming up.
Yeah.
Now with the wealth that came from these third world countries, what is to build their economies? A lot of them are well off now, and they're running the show, and have been underdeveloped too. But now that the bread is buttered, and the mouth well sweet, third world countries have to grind their teeth. While the products from agriculture coming under constant trade pressure, it does make me feel these people really want us to suffer. So I'm making a plea to them big money country to tell them that we in the blood war territory. Now we want them cancel the foreign debt, because we facing some serious threat to we survival. to the masses of we population. So if they're true to the concept of a global community, I bet them cancel the foreign debt immediately. Now I'm making a plea, to them big money country.
Yes, cancel it. You know, Fidel Castro was one of the first people that said that debt is unpayable. Fidel Castro said that debt is unpayable and they should just cancel all of this and start on a clean page, because they got wealthy from the backs of the people who produced for them in the Caribbean and elsewhere. They got wealthy by going and rob the wealth of the people in Africa and the people in the Caribbean, and so in order to make themselves wealthy. And now you are coming and give us loans and stuff and holding us to ransom, you know, as a consequence. So if we consider it to be a global village, in a village we look after each other's interests. So if you're genuine about looking after our interests, let's start on a clean page. Cancel the foreign debt immediately. As I said, right? Right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So this is just a bit of unfinished work, you know, it's a work in progress that I just chose to share it, you know, to really make a point and to demonstrate, you know, where we are and the thinking, you know, that some people are putting into the challenges that we face, you know, the way how some people analyze it. And that is my take on the issue. You know, they sent out their armies many years ago when they wanted to expand and grow, you know, and the nations that brought them so much wealth untold, these are the nations that they call in the third world, you know. And after they suck the moral of this country's bones and leave them to make it on their own, they keep formulating new plans, creating new institutions to ensure massive debt on the people of those regions. That's the reality of our world today, you know. But in any event, we have two of our guests are with us, and we have a very important conversation. As I said, this is the main event for this afternoon, as we get into a conversation about how do we ensure, or how do we create, how do we establish a concrete approach for the involvement of our diaspora in our domestic economy? Because time and again, you hear the politician, when it's convenient for them, they get up on a podium and they speak about how important it is for our diaspora to be involved in our development, how critical is the remittances that come from overseas, from the diaspora. And then again, when the people in the diaspora question the politician on some issues, the same politician turn around and say, all you living here, all you this, and all you that. And you find the cheerleaders get up and start to, the same people who run to Western Union and who run to MoneyGram to collect the remittances from the people in the diaspora, the same people are taking the line of the politician and saying, all you don't live in here, and only there, they're running all your mouth. These are the same people that have to come to your rescue. More importantly, we have produced many of our people who live overseas have risen to very prominent positions. They have become the engine of growth in the country where they live. Yeah. They have lifted themselves. They have educated themselves. They are now professionals in different fields. They work for major corporations and major establishments and so out there. So they are the engine of growth in these countries. But our politicians have not been able to embrace them in a manner that is going to allow them to work in a cohesive, unified, and structured way in terms of addressing the issues of unemployment in this country by getting into the development of projects, programs, and so on that is going to become income generating opportunities and job providing opportunities for our people. So we have been left to be satisfied with and to settle for making a phone call and then going to MoneyGram or Western Union. And then when our government make their blunders, and some of us and the people in the diaspora question the government about some of the decisions, all you don't live in here, and all you does they running all your mouth, and so on and so on. So we want to start a different conversation this afternoon as to how do we establish a concrete approach for the involvement of our diaspora in our domestic economy. And I'm expecting 2 more people to join us presently. We have with us a member of the Gem FM family, Brother Delbert Baptiste, and a newcomer to the Gem FM platform, Brother Tony DaBreo, a gentleman that I knew growing up in Guave. Is another Guave man. He's a man that's out there, that he works in the field of management and so on. And I felt it necessary, and he's a big time musician too, play with, the Third World Band, Cat Co, and, that kind of crew, and understand? So he ain't no piao guy, you understand what I'm saying? So I'll allow the 2 gentlemen to introduce themselves. Brother Delbert is a regular, everybody know him already. So,
that's fine, that's fine.
Brother Tony DaBreo. Brother Tony DaBreo, thank you for agreeing, for accepting the invitation to be here. And welcome to the Gem FM platform. Welcome to the comfort zone. Good afternoon to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's certainly a pleasure, and I hope you can hear me well.
We're hearing you wonderful. I'm hearing you wonderful, very much, very well.
All right, terrific, man. I left Grenada in 1986. My mother had invited me. She had moved there earlier on, and I started my current career, my career with my current company. I think January 9th will be 24 years. So it's been a journey, and it's coming from Guave, and I think learning so many things from Guave in the suburb of Douglaston, as I will call it. You learned, to appreciate quite a few things. Hard work is one of them. The other thing that you learn to appreciate is the resiliency of people who you deal with. To see people throughout the diaspora do so many amazing things. And I have to commend them for what they've done so far. When I see what has come out of the Grenadian diaspora, it's been tremendous. People have worked hard and have built substantial net worths. They've built just a combination of things. And they've been able to, again, reinvest in Grenada in meaningful ways. But I think there's more to be done. I think there's a lot to be done. And I'll be quiet for now, but I'm excited to be part of this, because I think the work that has to be done will require a lot of lifting. And I do believe that Grenadians abroad and at home has, I think, the strength and the wherewithal to get it done. So I'm excited.
If you mentioned working with your company, for an indication of what that entails, what field are you in, and so on?
Well, I'm in the insurance industry, and
Okay.
we're primarily responsible for sales, leadership, sales management. So we work through independent agents, and their primary purpose is sales and service of products and services that we afford the respective communities. So it's been in multiple different roles, but nonetheless, it's been a progression of roles over the last 24 years. And again, I attribute, the success that I have to a lot that came from my home country, the things that I learned, the people that I learned from, my grandmother in particular, other leaders throughout our communities, instilled in me a work ethic that I think has afforded tremendous opportunity. And when you get to those opportunities, how you design ways and means to leverage those opportunities, if you know what I mean.
Yep, definitely. Well, there we have a professional in the field of insurance. And we have, a couple of weeks ago, we had a professional in the field of cardiology, a man who's written papers that's become that's the guideline as to how people in that field treat with certain conditions and undertake certain procedures and so. So we have produced and continue to produce people of very high quality, and throughout the rest of the year, it is my intention to bring more of these people, not just Guelph people because they're from Guelph. Well, yeah, Brother Delbert, Brother Delbert is not from Guelph, neither is he from Victoria. He's from St. Patrick. So it's my intention to have more people. In fact, there's another doctor that I have lined up to join me in a couple of weeks from now, not next week, probably the following week. He is locally based. And there's another doctor that's based overseas. He's from St. David, so it is my intention to bring these people to the fore so that they can share not just their experiences, but to indicate the quality and the level of professionalism that they have that can be used if we were to work in a cohesive way to take us to another level, to bring the kind of development that we believe that we are entitled to. So, Brother Delbert, remind us your area of expertise and so on. Tell the people who is Delbert Baptiste as we speak today about getting the diaspora more involved in our domestic economy.
Well, first thing, I want to welcome Brother DaBreo to the GMFM family.
Mm-hmm.
And
thank you, sir.
He said two words that resonated with me in particular: resiliency and Guelph. And I think if anybody who understands the parish of St. John's and Guelph in particular would immediately see the synergy between those two words. Yeah, I think they're interchangeable. And by the way, Pablo, being an old shaper boy, I have temporary residency.
All right. No problem. You're welcome. That's the thing about it. Guelph embraces all.
Yes,
because listen, Brother Delbert,
many
of the people who are born in Guelph, their parent or their grandparent or their great-grandparent would have come from St. David, St. Andrew, St. Patrick, some whatever. I mean, I know plenty people who came from St. Patrick and came to Guelph, and they've laid their roots in Guelph. Some of them laid their bodies in Guelph,
Yeah,
So,
I have a lot of nieces and nephews in Guelph, by the way.
In Guelph, all right.
Banzal, Ocean, Cheryl.
Oh, yeah?
Those are my nieces.
I didn't realize you're that close. You're real close.
Those are my nieces and nephews.
You're real close. That's me people and them.
Yes,
You know?
yes, man.
Miss Norma
So listen,
Miss Norma used to feed me.
that's my big sister.
Yeah, Miss Norma used to feed me.
That's my big sister.
That's a house I could have entered any time and be fed.
Oh man, we're gonna have to chat about that, you know.
Yeah, go ahead.
She took right up from the old lady, you know. Yeah, so I think this is a really, really important topic, and I think the diaspora has a tremendous amount to contribute. I don't think that the succeeding administrations in St. George's have sort of come up with the correct vehicle or put the correct mechanism in place that would sort of create a platform or a direct path that would not only encourage Grenadians living in the diaspora, but make it easy for them to invest in Grenada. And then there are other side to it too. One of the things that we have to do in the diaspora is to find ways to collaborate more among ourselves, because there might be something I can do individually or Brother DaBreo can do individually. But if we come together, if we form units, whether however we want to call them, and we decide to work collaboratively, we would find out that we can do much more. So listen, I have worked in a number of varying fields, living overseas. When I first sort of came to the US, I worked in the security aviation business for a little while, then got into some training and retail management, banking, and then eventually went out on my own as a local developer. So that has been the space that has occupied my time since I would say about 1997. It is something I understand very well, and I have been fortunate to have the opportunity to do it not only in the US, but in consulting on other projects in different parts of the diaspora, including the continent of Africa. I've been involved in projects in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, and had it not been for COVID-19 last year, I would have been in Ghana on a major project, which I'm looking forward to doing this year. So that's a space that I occupy. I think it's a space that I'm quite knowledgeable about. I'm happy that Ken would be joining shortly.
Ken is already here.
Okay, we have worked together on a number of projects, and I look forward to the conversation, because I think in this post-COVID era, we are going to have to redefine how we view and build an economy. All right, because when you look at what has happened in Grenada in 2020, and the economy basically collapsed because it was built and sustained entirely by tourism and largely School of Meds and a few other areas.
I think someone needs to mute a microphone because we're getting a tremendous amount of feedback.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so we have to look at how are we going to build a new economy that's going to benefit as much a people that live on the island as possible, and that it's going to be fair and equitable, and that in so doing, people would be given the opportunity where they see themselves advancing, not only in terms of better education, because how we educate and what we educate people about and where we focus and where we spend money on those things are going to have long-term effect for the kind of development that we have down the road. And I think the point that you made leading into the discussion about the varied amount of skills, varied amount of talents, varied amount of expertise that Grenadians living in the diaspora have acquired, in particular over the last 35 years, can serve our nation very, very, very well. So if we can get the partisan politics out of it and focus on how we empower people, how we help, when we sell a program, that the man who lives in Pointsville, St. Patrick's, and the man who lives in Point Saline, St. George's, can both see themselves, how they benefit from these programs, then we're on the right way. And I think the diaspora has some answers, has some solution to some of the problems that are currently confronting our people.
Well, I have to agree. I think when I think about our current set of circumstances, is where do we go here from? Where do we go from here? I think that's the more crucial question. Where do we go from here? Because we've had just many attempts to get this thing on track, many attempts to do what I think the intent is here, and it hasn't really worked. So I think we have to first assess what's the data saying to us. We have to get and find out, assess what really is, because we might be here with this pipe dream that says the diaspora wants to invest, and we may find out through the data that they have no desire or willingness to do so. So we have to figure out what the data says. I think we have to go beyond that and examine, what are the available resources that we have currently. We have to consider whether we like it or not. There has to be a private/public initiative or ventures.
Yes,
we have to do that because there's a lot of infrastructure already in place. It's about corralling and bringing them together that ultimately leads to, I think, more meaningful progress. I think, there must be, I think, a plan or blueprint that says we have to consider the broader economy. So the economy that involves the haves and the have-nots. Yes. The have-nots often come to the table expecting a piece of the pie and leaves the table without any pie. Yeah. So we have to consider the have-nots, and they can't wait for another promise. It has to be delivered. That they get too many promises, and as a consequence, they leave disenchanted. People don't want to participate in the process because they've tried on many occasions, and there's nothing to show for it. Yeah. I think the other thing that has to happen, there has to be rigorous accountability and transparency within our systems. Yeah. Without rigorous transparency and accountability, and when I say accountability, I mean true accountability. Not, well, let me slap you on the wrist and you can go and sit in your place or your perch of power and continue the same nonsense that you've always done. No, there need to be rigorous accountability and transparency. So, I think investors want to conduct business in a place where there is an environment of trust. People want to know that they can trust the systems, the administrators, the people who are ultimately will help lead these initiatives, these projects. They want to do so. We all know investments are risky, right? That's just inherent nature of investments. It is risky. But I think what happens is that people become wary of risk that is elevated, in my opinion, when there is influence of corruption. People they're leery. People are working hard, really hard in the cold in North America, Canada and the United States, in England and other places, to earn monies and to take those dollars, hard-earned dollars, and invest them in a system where it lacks trust. Yeah. Good luck. That's not happening, man. Yeah. That ain't happening. So I think what we have to do is help to develop that infrastructure. I'll shut up for now, but those are a couple of things I wanted to lead off with. So you hear at least my perspective when it comes to we have to influence policy because there is enough. If I take the 1-to-1 ratio for every one person there is on the island, there's another person as part of the diaspora, then we have tremendous influences economically, which I think we can turn into policy influence, where we can start influencing policies that, again, will have a broad impact on the economy, not just for the haves, but for the have-nots as well, so that they can begin to effectively participate in our economic system. So let me be quiet for now and hear from others. Thanks.
Okay.
You're on mute, Pablo.
Ken Lewis has joined us. So Ken, it is your turn now to you know, to make your opening statement on the whole issue of a more concrete approach to having the involvement of our diaspora in the domestic economy. And this definitely is going to be the first in a series of such conversations. In fact, going forward, this element is going to form part of the conversation that I'll be having with the different guests who will be coming to the comfort zone. Like, for example, next week I'll be having the interim leader of the main opposition party in the country. So this is going to be Adrian Persuader Thomas. This is going to form part of the conversation, right? Some weeks down the road, there is that group that has this Facebook page that they call the Grenada Genealogical Society. They do a lot of research in the history of the families and so on. Some of them are based in England. And so this is going to form part of the conversation, right? Yeah. I'm expecting to have Dr. Patrick Antoine back on the program. He's been here before, right? He has recently established the Grenada movement as an NGO in the country. He has been speaking extensively on a number of policy issues and, you know, addressing issues of the economy. And so that element of it will form part of the conversation that we are going to have. The agricultural senator has already committed to come on the program. This is going to form part of the conversation that we are going to have. So all of the stakeholders, local and abroad, will have the opportunity to contribute to that conversation, and so that we can come up with the best working agenda as to how we can get the diaspora more directly involved in a cohesive and concrete manner in the development of our domestic economy. Ken Lewis, the floor is yours.
Hey guys, good afternoon to all the panelists.
Yes.
Afternoon to everyone listening, and a happy new year.
Yes,
2021 has to be a lot better, because I mean it's operating with a very low bar, you know. Almost compared to any other year, this has to be a better year. Although of course we see the volcano has started in St. Vincent and a lot of people have to evacuate, and my prayers and hopes are with them. When we look at Grenada, and one of the things I think we tend to do in Grenada is to a lot of times reinvent the wheel. So we're a small country, and we somehow believe a lot of times that the problems we face are very specific to us. And there are many specific things to any country. You have some things that you alone have. But there is a lot of things that we sometimes do without realizing that many people have done this previously. This is known. One of the things, like Mr. Pursoo mentioned a while ago, is the fact that for you to have business development, you have to have certain...
Ken, Mr. Pursoo is not here as yet.
Okay, sorry.
This is Tony DaBreo. That's here. Sorry. Mr. Pursoo has not joined us as yet.
That Mr. DaBreo mentioned a while ago. Sorry, I just got it mixed up. The fact is that many of these things are very basic to development. You can't have a country where corruption is an issue, where you don't have certain basic policies in place and people are going to invest their money. So there's a lot of things that we could correct without even having to go and investigate again. Another one is, if you remember, after independence, I grew up in the Gary GNP time. And what the Canadians at that time was the amount of hope that almost everyone had. They were going to do great things. They're going to be a national explosion of involvement. When you have an election and you have basically 1/3 of the people not even voting, not even interested in the way the country is going, that's a real problem. And part of that is due to the fact that there is no transparency, and they have not, as some people tend to, as we normally would say, the people who are poorer, the people who have difficulty, many times feel that they have been given a rate. And so I think that's where we have to start, both for the diaspora and for any development at all, for anyone to really be involved. We have to change that. People have to be involved. There have to be some basic policies that guarantee a fair hearing, that there wouldn't be corruption of people, resources, that there'll be redress through courts and all of that sort of thing. So I think, and that is one of the area that this government in particular, but many other governments past, have really, really failed. And so we have to make sure that whoever comes to power next in Grenada do it and put some of these platform things in place so the economy can go forward from there.
Question. Are we saying that the politicians or the political directorate is imperative and absolute to any diaspora initiative in terms of addressing local economic challenges? Is that what we say? And that without them, the diaspora as a collective is unable to do anything? Open question.
So if you don't mind, I'll respond.
Yeah.
I would say, so I think government can be helpful, or they can serve as a hindrance when it comes to the initiatives that we're contemplating here. When the role of government is almost as a facilitator in many instances when it comes to that sort of economic development. My opinion, and that's what you'll get from me today, by the way, is an opinion.
That's what we're looking for.
Is that there are times when the government needs to just get out of the way, and there are times then the government needs to be involved. So I can think of a couple of instances where I think the government can play a crucial role. Let's say, for instance, we talk about infrastructure development. Let's say high-speed infrastructure development, high-speed internet infrastructure development. We need the government to help in aiding the construction and development of those initiatives. We have, I think, tremendous brain power in the Caribbean, and Grenada specifically, where we are involved and we're close proximity to major markets within the Western Hemisphere. So you have Canada, you have the United States, you have England, and it just happens that we're English speaking as well. So I think that's an advantage we have, that we're English speaking, and that if we can help, the government can help in alliance with the private sector to build and develop high-speed internet throughout the island, then we can become a viable technological component to technology in the Western Hemisphere. Because I think Grenadians have that brain power. I think we have the intellect. We have all that is required. Now, do we have the training and development that is required to get us there? I don't think not yet. Do we have access to it? I believe we do. But I think that's one element of our example, rather, that I think the government can help being involved. There are some times, and I'd love to hear from others, how the government needs to stay away in some instances so that they can facilitate growth and development. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, because definitely, and that is particularly true in small countries and small economies like Grenada, where the government plays an oversized role. But government generally comes with a sort of built-in level of inefficiency, and that when you're working from a private sector point of view, and these are things that you have already wrung out of your system. So when private investors sometimes find it very difficult to work with government. But earlier on, you talked about good public-private partnership, and I think that's a roadmap for the future. But how do we do that? How do we do that? Okay, I thought Pablo was asking a sort of separate question, in that the political leadership in Grenada knows beyond any certain doubt the talent that exists in the diaspora, right? So when it's convenient or when it's necessary, or it serves their own narrow interests to access that, whether it's intellectual resources, financial resources, or otherwise, they're very good at doing that. But when we have ideas and opinions and we may come with sort of a proven track record of getting certain things done in certain industry that they don't either, one, understand or necessarily agree with, or they don't see how they can benefit from it personally, they put up roadblocks. I have known many locals who have gone back, attempted to invest in projects throughout the island, and they were just frustrated out. You know, they took the quickest flight out and left. So the question now is, how do we create that vehicle? How do we create that platform that Ken spoke about, that if I or a group of people in the diaspora or an individual wants to come, there's an entity that he can go to Grenada, sit down, look at what the overall master plan is. He might have his own ideas. He may be bringing a certain degree of expertise that are not locally available on the island, all right, and that he can get it done. But there is a level, because of the corruption in Grenada, and because of the lack of transparency and accountability, there is a sort of level of micromanagement that happens at the very granular level that's shocking. And I'll tell you one quick story. A number of years ago, a friend of mine, his dad was sick, and they were concerned about his father getting bed sores. So there's this particular mattress that prevents that. So he had a letter from his dad's local doctor in Grenada, bought the mattress here, shipped it down via JetBlue, had it folded up. And when it got to the airport, they had the accompanying letter from the medical people up here and the local doctor. The customs official would not let it in. They said that he's bringing it in to sell. You know, one mattress, medicated mattress. The mattress ended up staying at Morris Bishop Airport for about a month. And on that one item, believe it or not, it had to go to cabinet to be approved. His father ended up dying before he got use of the mattress.
So I don't know if you can see my temperature rising as you tell that story.
And this thing happens in Grenada all the time. It could be a mattress this week. Next week, it could be you trying to get maybe a small agro plant going, or trying to buy a fishing boat, because I know somebody who came back from the US and tried the fishing co-op going in parish of in Sunset City, actually, and he was frustrated out. He basically just parked the boat up in St. George's and went back to the US, and it's still there. So we have to create that vehicle where projects are selected or are green lighted based on whether it's viable, whether it's going to provide jobs, whether it's going to empower and uplift people, and it's not based on who you know or any sort of level or degree of political patronage. And I think what people don't realize that just like in the US, how racism has a cost on the economy, in small countries like Grenada and even in the US and countries around the world, corruption has a real cost on development, because it stagnates, you know, it robs people of opportunities. Because if you're not spending approved money in the right way and doing it efficiently, then your healthcare system suffers, then your education system suffers, then the question of high-speed internet as a major infrastructure project suffers. And these are the things that we have to look at. And the question is, how do how do we be able to not just put sort of economic pressure on the government, but how do we first work in the diaspora with locals on the ground, put political pressure and demand a greater level of excellence in governance to get those kind of projects done. And I think if we can help in that, then it will be a good start.
Well, there is a saying earlier on in the program, I played a collection. It's a package that I put together. It was one clip essentially, but it was smaller clips put together from Les Brown. And Les Brown is on record as saying, if it's hard, you do it hard. And this is, yes, we know that this is not going to be an easy task. We know that it is going to be a challenging one. It's going to be a hard one, but it's hard, and we will have to do it hard, because we know that there is a track record of politicians, as was mentioned before, conveniently embracing and engaging the diaspora. But when it really comes to working with them in that cohesive way that is going to be transforming, that is going to create a transformational environment that is going to bring about meaningful change in people's lives and make people independent of the political directorate, there is a reluctance to go in that direction. Given that situation, what are the prospects for a diaspora collective first coming into being and being able to get anything done, given the examples that you've used, that in spite of that, what is it going to take to get you professionals out there to be able to work in a cohesive way and to begin to address some of those issues? Brother Ken, started with you.
Salaries.
Okay.
You see, one of the things I find a lot of, mentioned a while ago, the corruption. But there are many other issues that you must take from a policy perspective. When you ask the question about whether politicians are, whether we can do it outside of the politician, it's one of those sort of circular questions, and which also has a circular answer. And the reason is this: politicians come from a society. So if the society is a certain way, it can only give you those type of politicians. And so nepotism is the order of the day, and people deal with their favorites, and only certain people get contracts. And that's what they grew up knowing. When they become a politician, that's what they do. So we have to break that cycle somewhere. And that's where leadership really is needed. This is how I see this being broken. And so for example, the simple idea of government having to constantly tax people more and more to be able to pay salaries at the end of the month and then tax it again, it is a constant circle that is not being broken. I mean, it's Liat probably is the best example. Liat is just one of the greatest examples I ever see. You keep taxing Liat as a means for you to make money. It becomes a cash cow. But the more you tax it, the less people travel, because the higher prices of flights, which in turn kills economic activity within the islands that bring you less taxes overall. So then you have to keep taxing until in the end, you kill it. You basically kill that goose. And no matter, and I have seen discussions from economic forums I've been in to Facebook, everybody knows it, but they just can't stop it because it has become such an important part of revenue. And so We have to break those cycles. One of them I just mentioned at the start is salaries. MBAs around the world, which have become so critical for many countries. There are lots of them. And in fact, when I was in school, there were a lot of Koreans and guys from Singapore who was at NYUM together with me. And unlike me and others, and Brazilians, a lot of these guys went straight back into the country. They landed in New York, they spent 2 or 3 years, and they flew right back. And the reason they could do that is because the salaries they were being paid in South Korea and Brazil and all of this thing were basically the same as they could get in the States. Many of us here as West Indians didn't have that option because we had kids to send to school and so on. So I think one way is to start to recognize that when you have good professionals that you need, you get back the benefits if you can bring the salary more reasonable so you can get it back. A professional going back home for 2 weeks and fixing a few tooth and whatever is nice, but that wouldn't change the economy radically. You got to get people, you got to put things in place for people to really do. Taxation is another one. You can't be taxing people if they come back to invest and then giving them all these taxations up front. Because in the US, they're able to get all kind of breaks within the first 3 years of a business. You have to look at those things.
I want to add one thing to the Liat thing that I think you didn't mention, is that after they kind of suck the lifeblood out of it through the taxes, just about when it's about to fail, that money that they were collecting, they come back and have to put it in it to survive. And I don't want to say anything yet, but I'm privy to some stuff happening at Liat now, and it's going to be a private company in the next couple of months, and it's going to be very, very, very different from what it is now. But that issue, because I don't understand how the respective governments throughout the region could not recognize the importance of inter-island travel. Even though if I wanted to just go to Trinidad and hang out for a couple of days, okay? But the ticket between a 30-minute flight from Grenada to Piaco International Airport is 300 or 400 US. I mean, it just. It's
like going back to the States. It's like going back to the States. I come to Trinidad on some kind of activity, and I wanted to go over to Grenada. I couldn't because the price to Grenada was like almost going back to the States. But that's the kind of government that we need.
No, I think, by the way, I also think that this thing has to start, almost take on a grassroots nature. When I say grassroots nature, I believe that you literally have to go into primary schools and begin to re-educate our nation on some of the virtues of a free market system. What that means, the role of corruption and how it plagues our nation's development. The common sense, by the way, which I think is not common. You talk about what leads someone to deny a dying person of a mattress, okay? That you believe, well, they're trying to sell it. But isn't the comfort of a dying human being, shouldn't that, in my opinion, supersede the fact that you believe someone will sell it on the open market? This is where I think our society has to come in and has to take responsibility as well. Yes, politicians come out of our society and we put them there. Most cases, they're not there because of revolution. They're because of whether it's a flawed system or not, they're elected and they're there. So how do we prevent somebody? And I had a similar story coming through. I was going to St. Kitts and I was leaving actually I'd gone to St. Kitts, leaving St. Kitts. I had a clear, a transparent vial of deodorant. You could see how much was in the thing, okay? The lady said, you got to throw it out because it says 4 ounces on it. It was, you could tell that the majority of it was gone. There was much, okay? She insisted because the label on the container said 4 ounces that it had to be tossed. How do I compete with that. And I can't argue with her because I'm staying in St. Kitts if I do. So we have to transform a society by teaching people common sense. I think it's teachable. I believe so because I've seen it work. And so we have to reform, and we have to start in our primary schools and go on at every level of education to get people acclimated to common sense decisions that serves our nation, that makes it more efficient and removes the inefficiencies, which, by the way, I think is tied to corruption, because the system as is, the status quo, requires corruption, requires inefficiency to work efficient for the corruptors.
Yes.
Understand?
Yeah.
That's what's at hand here, in my opinion. So I believe it has to be a grassroots initiative that ultimately has to involve has to come from things like sponsorships, right? We have to sponsor common sense on the island of Grenada. We have to. Yeah. We have to commit our resources to sponsoring, whether it's dialogues like this, inviting the masses to understand how we should think, the more macro issues, which is investing in acquisitions and funding ventures, all of the above. But I agree with you. That has to fundamentally change in our nation in order for us to progress and to evolve to a state where we can be more effective, more efficient in our economy.
Time and again, we hear talk about the importance of and the extent or the percentage, although it's never been measured in a scientific way, of remittances to the local economy. Is it possible for the diaspora to collectively leverage some of that remittances in a manner that goes into specific projects, programs, income-generating initiatives, in particular within the rural communities, that is going to be able to provide the kind of opportunities in terms of productivity, whether it is in fishing, in farming, whatever, you name it, that is going to be able to make a difference in the lives of people and ultimately impact on the local economy. Is that possible?
Sure, it's possible, but it's going to take some hard work, and it's going to require the skill set of people probably who have been frustrated out of the system, so they don't feel like participating in it. But I guess what you're sort of pushing at is where folks in the diaspora could actually create a sort of diaspora fund and see how we can leverage this in the financial space with other financial institutions that may lend to developing countries or lend to projects that relate specifically educational or healthcare projects or projects surrounding development in rural areas. And there are a number of institutions in and around the US, and certainly a few that I know of in the European market, that lend specifically to those things. And you even get really nice grace period. I'm working on something now where a public-private partnership program in Ghana, and the final document is going to give them a 24-month sabbatical. So all they would require to pay on that loan is just basic interest for the first 24 months. And then there is a way that the funder can come in and use some of that own capital to turn that loan after a 5-year period into a grant. So there are things that we can do. I wanted to tie back something what Ken said earlier and what DaBreo said. The question of, okay, and I don't think Ken meant it that way, because I think he for himself, who has gone back to Grenada from time to time and helped out and contributed, the value of that. But when it's done sort of helter-skelter, you don't see the effect of it. But if it's done in a really organized way, where you, let's say we develop something called, and I'm just throwing out a term here, a diaspora core, where you have, you bring together people in the diaspora with particular skill set. So we know those who are in healthcare, those in education, those in engineering, those in management, all put together under this core. So we know 10 people in the engineering field is going to go to Grenada, and whether it's mechanical, electrical, or whatever engineering, that you can target it, you can see results, as against me just going and trying to help somebody in St. Patrick's or in St. David's or whatever.
Yeah.
For years now, I have been involved with a number of other people calling for us to rethink how we teach young people. And it ties in what Brother DaBreo was saying. To start at a very young age to teach entrepreneurship in the school, to teach them common sense, to teach them how, because listen, a lot of these young kids now who are going to these primary schools in Methodist in Grenville and Catholic in St. David's and St. Peter's in Guave and RC in Sotez are going to find out that they are going to be working in the international space, and they're going to be competing in another 10, 12, 15 years with students from China, with students from South Korea, with students from Taiwan, with students from Finland. So how do we in the diaspora help better prepare them for those challenges that they are going to face, even when they immigrate to the United States? Because there is a learning curve. And those of us who have been fortunate and have lived here and have been relatively successful owes them something. We need to build a bridge for them to travel so that their sort of inclusion into this economy is less rugged than it was for us. And if we do that, we again will be helping tremendously with how we affect change in the local space.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I understand we're a small country, and if you have 12 doctors coming back in the summer to look at people teeth and oral stuff, that could make a real difference. In fact, I sort of know of somebody that was involved in a project and they said it was one of the greatest things, and they did. So yes, those projects are really good. But I was looking at sustainability, at having something where people are not doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but doing it because it generates something for them. That's how economic activity really go. Right. Yeah. I mean, remittances. We always talk about remittances. I think Pablo asked him the question a while ago. If remittances could be turned to investment, yes and no, in a sense. A remittance is money that flows without an asset backing it. Someone sends this money to a family member, to the aunt who is sick. It's a gift. The mindset is totally, and Grenada has a slightly higher average, 5.1% for the last 20 years, more or less, compared to the world average of about 4.6. So it's a high, so it's relatively showing a goodwill on the part of Canadians. Okay? But the reality is that the mindset for remittance as opposed to an investment are two different mindsets.
Yeah.
The money I send to my grandmother is for my grandmother. She spends it how she wants.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not for a business. And it's that business part that the Grenada Directorate, not just from the government, but also Grenadian businesses and others have to join together, as Mr. DaBreo was saying, from a grassroots level, and recognize how we need to change the way we function to attract that kind of investment.
But Ken, let's turn this. I
was going to say, Delbert, that a question that I think will be asked by the diaspora is, what's in it for us? And that's a valid question. So
exactly.
A couple of examples, right? I think the average 401k, annual average rate of return for 401k is between 5 and 8% in the United States. You look at the S&P 500, it's around 8% from 1957. You look at commercial real estate is around 9.5%, and residential real estate is around 10.6%. So when we talk about, this noble idea of investing, there is that, and I'm glad you raised that, Ken, because I'm on no illusion. People want to know what is in this thing for me. I want a return on my investment. So I think we have to find ways ultimately to make that part of the conversation. That, if I'm going to take, let's say I take $100,000 out of my portfolio to put into Grenada, and today I'm getting a 10% return on my money here in the United States. Why should I take $100,000 and put it into Grenada if, one, because of mismanagement or whatever we choose to attribute it to, it will give me a return of 1 or 2%? Why should I do that? And I think that's a valid question. And so that's why the infrastructure of trust has to be developed. The infrastructure of accountability has to be developed so that people have confidence that the projects they will invest in will give them like, kind, and quality in terms of return on their investments on the island as compared to their current state of residence.
Yes.
So I want to actually add a different angle to that. So Ken, let's go back to the remittance thing and how it might be possible, because we're very individualistic. So I agree with you. If I'm sending for my family, that's for my family, right? But for those of us who think in broader terms, those of us who think in terms of how we can leverage resources to develop. Let's say we were going to organize a group, a corporation, and there's over 100,000 people Grenadians living in the diaspora. And we say, okay, every month, we know you send $100 to your family. And that's they're waiting on. You're probably sending that to 4 generations of that family. There's probably only 1 or 2 persons working in that family. So they're really struggling. So they're really looking forward to that $100 every month. And we say, let's come together as a unit. Take $5 out of that $100. It might not tremendously affect the lives of the people home. They might be able to go without that $5. And we get, 1,000, 2,000 people, and we start pulling those resources together. We form a corporation, we give people shares, and then we start to leverage it. Why can't that work? And why can't, in other words, we're using a small portion of our remittance now and it would have a sort of greater multiplying effect on what happens. So now that family that you are trying to help, you are trying to sustain with $100 or $200 a month, now 2 additional members of that family would be able to get employment from a business that diaspora corporation would have set up. And that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about. And the question is whether or not we could do it. And I know you're a person that have long said one of the difficulty we have, not only as Grenadian, but as Black people working together, sometimes the only thing that we find we have in common is the color of our skin. So we have to find ways, new ways to solve old problems, because in my view, the situation is getting worse. I speak to, and I know other people here do it, to friends in Grenada who pay attention to this. And I was speaking to a longtime friend about a month ago who is particularly interested in this kind of issues and social justice and how you empower people. And he's lived all his life in Grenada. He's about 65 years old, recently retired. And he said this is the first time in his lifetime he is seeing like 8 and 10 and 12-year-old kids on the street in Grenada hustling. And he said that's not when you standing outside selling produce from your mother or your father grew tomatoes, so you're waiting for the people going to Grenville on the bus or whatever. He says actual kids on the street hustling to feed themselves. And he never thought he would have seen that. So if these kids can't feed themselves and their parents can't feed them, chances are a great percentage, a large percentage of that generation, we are going to lose them. And we may be losing a future doctor, a future attorney, a future scientist, and we are robbing the country of its human resources. So how can we, is there an initiative waiting there? Is there something that we can do along that line to maximize that sort of return on investment.
Okay, I want to come back to that, but we see that a gentleman that I've been expecting to join us, but he seemed to have had some technical difficulties getting in with us this afternoon. Mr. Eugene Pursoo, ex-ambassador, professor at Medgar Evers College, and I can tell you, I was doing some, a little review, a little, check-in, and I saw that, some of the reviews and the ratings that he got from the students at Medgar Evers. Out of 5, he was carrying a 4.8 rating. And they spoke so highly of how easy he makes learning and the kind of the quality of the content that he presented. Some of them even indicated that with the notes that he provided, they didn't need to buy the textbook. So so we have with us ex-ambassador Pursoo, professor at Medgar Evers College. It's good to finally have you here, and I hope that I shouldn't say I hope, I expect that this is not going to be the only time that you are going to be with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul.
For those who really don't know, our listeners, our viewers out there who really don't know too much about Mr. Pursoo, just give us a bit of your background.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul.
Yeah,
I think first of all, let me apologize for my lateness. I got the time mixed up between New York time and Grenada time. That was the problem mainly. I think that many of the people on the panel know me. I know Ken Lewis, I know Delbert. I think, is that Mr. DaBreo there?
Yes, sir.
Right. And John Kelly's, I see him frequently on Facebook when I used to be on Facebook, but I don't think we've ever met in person. You've said it more than I think needs to be said about me. You're very generous. Sometimes while you were speaking, I almost didn't recognize who you were talking about. But I had some wonderful opportunities in life to do things that motivated me, things that I believe in. When I taught at Medgar Evers College, I was teaching Caribbean people. And so I was at home. When someone from the University of Arizona writes a book on public administration, I could easily take that book and sort of appraise every chapter using terminologies and references that Caribbean people would feel more comfortable with. And so many of my students would say to me, well, Professor, I read the book, but I didn't understand it. Now that I got your notes, I don't have need for the book. And that's something that just happened. But I was blessed to be able to work with my own people. And that remains one of the highlights in my life. The last job I did at Medgar Evers College was Director of International Education. I established something called the USA Caribbean Consortium on International Education. And I got the University of the West Indies, University of Guyana, University of Trinidad and Tobago, and some of the other schools to join in a consortium. But unfortunately, infighting at Medgar Evers College destroyed it, and it doesn't exist today. But nevertheless, let's move on. I'm now retired, and I'm very pleased to be part of this discussion. From what I heard when I jumped in, I heard some intervention by 3 persons, by Ken first, then Mr. DaBreo, you said?
Yes, sir.
DaBreo, yeah.
Yes, and then Delbert, and all very valuable discussion, to be honest with you. What Delbert was suggesting last was the idea of going beyond family remittances, beyond personal remittances, to create organizations that would sort of create sustainable contributions to economic development. Mr. DaBreo is very correct. Many people here would want to know, well, look, a lot of the people here, we make remittances to our homeland because we love Grenada. In general, the majority of people I encounter in the diaspora love their country. That is true for Grenada and it's true for Caribbean people in New York. And so many times when we make contribution on a personal level, we're not looking for a return. But once we enter that business sector now, where we're going to take money from our 401k, money from our thing, we cannot help but make comparison and say, well, how am I going to do better than investing somewhere here? So that is very important. I forget the point that Ken was making, but I know while he was making it, I agreed with him that it was a valuable point, talking about personal remittances as different from contributing to worthy causes in the country. And let me say this, that I have played around with this idea in my mind. I have some knowledge of what is happening. In Grenada economy is in serious trouble right now as we speak, particularly as a result of the COVID pandemic. We see that for instance, in 2009, the World Bank said that our GDP was 1.8 billion US dollars. It dropped a little it dropped in 2019 from 1.86 to 1.23. And they're projecting almost a 12% decline because of COVID. So it will drop further to perhaps 1.9 billion. We are acutely aware of that in this country here, and we do want to help. But the problem is, where is the mechanism for us as a people to help? You know, what has happened in the past, governments in Grenada has attempted to use the Consul General's office as a sort of conduit. And when that happens, what we have is the Consul General's office then become almost like a support group, a political support group. And there are many people who are not attracted to that. So we have to be organized from this front. And the government has to recognize us as an organized people, not as a support group, because we don't support Grenada because our political party is in power. We support Grenada because we love our country. And so we have to be organized at this end. The government has to recognize us, and we have to build special relationship. And we have serious problems there. The political environment has been somewhat poisoned over the last few years or decades. And so we need to repair that. We need to move off the political scene into the national scene so that we as nationals could contribute to our economy. Even when we send personal money, remember, there's a certain amount of communication. If I don't communicate with my family home, I'm not going to be sending them money. We have to have communication, and that is lacking. People home cannot only communicate with you when they need something from you. We have to have a relationship. And this is what I'm saying. We at this end and at the home end, we both have to agree to build that organization. Let me explain something to you. Right now, I have an idea of how much the government invests in its foreign missions, in the UN, in Washington, in Beijing, in Europe. And when you consider how much we in the Grenada diaspora, whether it's include the United States, London, Canada, we contribute over $400 million a year. I ask you, which of these embassies come close to contributing that kind of money? Yet the government invests in those embassies, maintaining relationship with those embassies, and nothing exists for the diaspora. And it cannot be just through your political support group. So I'm saying that first we have to be organized. We have to respect and be prepared to work with each other. Once that we could do that, once we have established that, the foundation would have been laid for great possibilities like what Delbert was talking about, Ken was talking about, and so forth. And that is the first point I would like to make, and just leave it, I'll jump in later as the discussion expands.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the things that keep coming up, and based on the comments that's been made from all and sundry, and as I've said before, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. But if it's hard, we're going to have to do it hard, because it is not something that can be left undone. Because everyone is indicating that we are on a downward trajectory, and there is no end in sight as long as it continues the way that it is going. It therefore means that there has to be a different approach. Something has to give. Some different thinking has to start somewhere, right? In order to begin to see an upward movement, in order to see the challenges and the situation that exists being addressed in some significant way. Like, for example, since COVID-19, during the lockdown, one of the challenges that teachers had was the fact that they now had to send assignments to students virtually.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the students, many of the students, didn't have the handsets, and especially in these rural communities, didn't have the handsets. In some instances, there's the handset that's used in the house, but they have to wait until mommy or big brother or who come home in order to get access. And that's the handset that's being used for whatever else, so it's a total inconvenience. As such, the level of compliance from the students were very low. That's one. Two, some of the households don't have electricity. Okay. Now we are seeing that school, which was scheduled to be opened on the 4th of this month, is not going to be opened that time. And given the prevailing circumstances with the COVID-19, the talk of community spread that's been happening, there's been talk of students in particular school that have become infected and so. So at this point in time, government themselves doesn't even have an idea. The teachers have been saying, well, government is going to be meeting with administrative people within the education sector during the course of this week to determine how we go forward. So it is very likely, and that school may not be open. We don't know when, but it's an indication that going forward, there is going to be much more of the information technology, the virtual classroom situation, the sharing of sending of assignments, and the assignments having to be returned through that medium. Okay, I know mention was made earlier on about the whole issue of information technology and IT initiatives and so. How can our diaspora help, right, in addressing some of this situation? What is it going to take? Mention was made earlier on too about there has to be some kind of networking between the various professionals out there, which means that to begin with, a database of people who bring particular skill sets to the table will have to be put in place. How do we get this thing started? How do we start? What's the starting point? Because as we say, it has to be done. It's not something as to whether we, there's no option really. It's something that has to be done. What are the ideas for us getting started?
Right. I don't think there is there will ever be a singular starting point for any of these initiatives. I think it has to be ultimately, it has to grow out of a set of initiatives that ultimately is corralled and ultimately managed by concerned individuals.
Okay.
It's literally, you're talking about a mammoth initiative to get to corral. It's almost the herding of cats. If you hear people talk about herding cats, that's ultimately it. No, I am not the person who believes that it can't be done. I believe that it can be done. But on the other hand, so for instance, that's why I emphasize the need for government involvement in the building of the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure, high-speed internet, so that everyone should have access to that, to Wi-Fi services. How would our children get educated in this environment if you don't have Wi-Fi services, if the intent is to deliver curriculums via online? I mean, so it's absurd that people will have the chicken come before the egg, or whichever you want to choose, and say that we're going to deliver these things to you online. But you know what? We're not going to give you access. We're not going to afford you access. So I think it's not only irresponsible, but it's absurd that somehow we get this sort of thinking coming out of leadership. That's why I'm a proponent of re-education. That we need to understand what leadership means. It can't be, it has to be selfless. It has to be rooted in service. It has to be honest. When I say, and by the way, I'll add honest twice, because it needs to be honest. And we need to respect others, and we have to be willing to abandon the old way of thinking. And there are many instances that we hold on to these old ways of thinking, and we find ourselves, it becomes debilitating for us because we can't move. I go back to technology, but even I go to as far to say, talk about cannabis. We're still criminalizing cannabis, marijuana or weed, whatever we want to call it, in the Caribbean. Think about that. It's the 21st century. Large economies across the world are benefiting tremendously from this stuff, right? And I don't care about what people's philosophies are on this thing. We can debate that. But just as a product, as an economic engine, an opportunity for economic development and growth, we're still living in some instances not only the 20th century, but in some instances the 19th century. So I think we have to break ourselves of that.
Yeah. So I think it's going to take three things, Pablo. One, we already possess: love of country, right? So in order to do that, and it ties into what Brother Pursoo said, love of country. And then the other two things it's going to take to do something like that is leadership, what Brother DaBreo just spoke about. And then we are going to have to cooperate with each other for the greater good of that piece of real estate that we all love. And if we can put those three things together, I think we're well on our way. But that would be a wonderful initiative. But believe me, one person can start this. One person can get this going. It's about you inspiring me bringing on Brother DaBreo, me bringing on Ken, bringing on John, bringing on Peter, bringing on whoever, bringing on Barbara, and getting them to buy in, okay? That they actually see not only how this can benefit themselves long term, but it can tremendously benefit many members of their family living back home. And I think that can be done. I want to just touch on something that Ambassador Pursoo said, and it's something that I've thought about for so long, and I was so happy to hear him say. I have always believed that our missions overseas should have a return on investment. We're a poor country. We're dealing with finite resources. So every mission we have in every respective country should bring back investment into Grenada, good investment, whether through grant or through direct capital investment, twice times the amount of money that is being spent on them living, operating that embassy. And if we that comes back, one, into putting good people like Ambassador Pursoo in position. Because one of the things, right, in the diaspora, successive governments have had diaspora officers, diaspora ambassadors, and again, it's a political appointment, but find somebody who understands that marketplace, who can build that bridge between looking at the investor group, the investor class, the professional investors, the foundation that offer grants and all those things, and seeing how we can marry it with our needs in Grenada. And if you don't have the right person or persons in that leadership position, then it's just a useless political appointment. So again, it ties back into government finding the right people to do the job based on our overall plan for national development. Because you can sit down and write the most beautiful plan, but if you don't have the people and a method and ways and means and objectives of how to execute that plan, it's only paper.
Delbert, let me just follow up on some of the things you just spoke about there. Let me say that you are very correct, and I'll tell you why that happens. Many times a government select a representative for abroad, it is done as a political payback. And whether or not the person is qualified is besides the question, is besides the point. Worse yet, we do not appreciate the fact that we have to train people. Yes. You can't take someone and put them in an office and the person knows nothing about what they're doing. They're going to pretend, they're going to waste time, and in so doing, instead of bringing in some kind of return to the country, we squander the country resources in that respect. And we have to, I remember when the NDC was about, I felt the NDC would have won the election, I think it was in 2008. I remember saying to Tillman, look, the way politics is, a percentage of your administration would have to be politically appointed, because the civil servants don't have an obligation to you to ensure that your promises to the people are delivered. The civil servants are only going to do their job. Who's going to look out to see that your promises are delivered? You're going to have to make some appointment. But if you do make the appointment right now, 9 months before the election, select some people and start training them. Train them in the various fields so that when you put them in a position, he had a political appointment, but they're qualified. They know what they're doing, and they could help your government, they could help the country. But you know what? We have been operating, as I think Mr. DaBreo said, with this kind of old thinking, and we're reluctant to step into, to make changes, because we're afraid that if we make changes, we are going to lose control. Yeah. And so these are all the problems that we have. But let me start with what we have. We have one of our most valuable resources in our diaspora. There's no question about that. I think I articulated that earlier by saying that the diaspora contributes annually close to 50 million. And I'm including Canada, London, all over the world. Close to 50 million, that's no small change. No other person, no other entities does that for Grenada. So let us begin with what we have. We have a diaspora that is willing to support the homeland. Right now, let's see how we work together. Because we have to realize that the members of the diaspora don't just want to transmit a few dollars. Yeah, we do that, but we want to do more. Yeah. We are gravely aware of the fact that our outward migration has created a brain drain on the country. There's no question about that. And that's not knocking the country to say that. That's not criticizing anyone back home. We do have some extremely brilliant people back home, but a lot of us have left, and that has its impact. Now, what we want to do is actually create a brain circulation, recirculation. The experiences and the knowledge that we've gained here, we want to contribute it towards our national development too. We don't just want to send a check every month to our family. We want to do more, and we're capable of doing more. And it's painful sometimes when you see we have qualified people throughout the diaspora. Yet when an opportunity comes for the government to utilize consultants, who they turn to? Who they turn to? The very people who have historically oppressed us and continue to oppress us. These are their first choice.
Yes.
Let me tell you something. I'm looking at this. I know Ken and Delbert. These guys would know more about tourism from this perspective than a white corporation will do. But then we never consult any of them to say, we never talk, we don't see our diaspora as an important tourist contributor. Why can't they? Why can't they attract us? Why can't they? I've always advocated that when we come home, and I'm talking about the tourist sector because I've paid attention to it, and I have some information as to how, because that's the sector that would be hardest hit by the COVID pandemic, the tourist sector. The flights has dropped to almost zero, right? And most of the hotels are barely staying open. How long could we sustain that? And I don't care what the World Bank or the IMF might tell us. There's some uncertainties that they cannot pinpoint. They cannot pinpoint, because even after the vaccination comes on, there's confidence. And I'll say something that I don't think much people are willing to say. I've spoken to many people here, not Grenadians, but many people who look at what Grenada reports as a COVID situation, and they smile. They don't believe that we're reporting reliable figures, and they think that we are underreporting it to protect our tourist industry. But at the same time, what is happening, these people are saying, well, we cannot trust your information. How do we walk into a situation where we don't trust that what you're telling us is accurate? And so we're not going to. I read something on the, I think it's the World Bank report, where this investment citizenship, people are saying now, well, we don't know, we don't trust the health situation. So we are now reluctant to invest when we cannot trust the health situation. And too often we think that when we think of us abroad here, there's lots of things we think about us, which is some of it not flattering, like calling us JCBs and these things. It's not flattering. It's making joke and say that I know a JCB because they always spraying themselves with insect repellent, and they smell like insect repellent. But we could laugh at these things because we know that wouldn't deter us from supporting our country. But there's much more we could do. And from my perspective, I believe that if you don't have the proper organization, things happen helter-skelter, and for a time it falls apart. And we see year after year, someone might come up with a brilliant idea, and then 2 years later, you say, well, what happened? It died because it did not have that organizational framework to sustain it. And so my thing is, first and foremost, we have to build the organization. We have to establish the relationship. Let me give you an example. I was in Cuba in 2018, and I was invited to come back around August, October, I can't remember the exact month, to make a speech on CARICOM-Cuba relations. They celebrate that day. And so I got back to New York and I started doing some research, preparing myself for that. I found out that CARICOM, it was not until 2014, CARICOM had its first 5-year strategic plan. Of course, a strategic plan that was prepared by a UK group. The group preparing the plan was from the United Kingdom. And my kind of a conspiracy theorist mind said, well, that happened because they're the ones who are paying for it. And if somebody's going to pay for something, we usually accept it, not realizing that perhaps it could be done better. But in any case, I begin to say, well, why did they went to the various islands. They spoke to the political constituency. They spoke to the business. They spoke to the civic organization, but not one attempt to speak to us in the diaspora. Even though that very same year, the Caribbean diaspora in the United States alone contributed $14 billion in 2014, but not a word to us. And then I came to the conclusion that we were not organized. Who are they going to come to speak to? Yeah. So I immediately reached out to a number of friends to come over to Medgar College, sit down with me. I invited people from Trinidad right up to Barbados. And we sat down and we agreed to form something called the Caribbean Diaspora United Incorporated. And we wrote up a charter, registered it with the state of New York, got our 501c3 status from the federal government to bring together a powerful organization of all the Caribbean countries. And we informed all the governments of what we're doing. In fact, we invited Mayor Motley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and Kamala Harris, because of our Jamaican roots. We invited them to be the keynote speaker at our opening ceremony, which was supposed to be at Rousseau on the Bay, and then the COVID threw it off. But we continue to operate in virtual space. And the reason why I saw that as important is that if we are not organized, people will not recognize us, and we have no strength, no power. Now, only yesterday I was speaking to someone who said to me he knows that Western Union make millions of dollars from Grenada. And the person was saying, well, how could we pressure Western Union to do things for us, to contribute back to the economy? I've been fighting with the medical school for the same cause too. You can't be making $500 million profit and we protecting and enabling environment. And what are you giving back to the community? I've written up programs, and while the provost, Penzic, approved the program and the nursing sector approved it, when it went to Wall Street for the real money people that own and operate SGU, they said, what is in it for us? And I said, look, I'm not talking about an expensive, I'm talking about something less than, you're making 500 million profit. I'm talking about something less than $150,000 to give back. You're not even sponsoring a local football tournament, a cricket, you're not doing anything outside of the little area in St. George's. Go to Sates, go to Guelph. Nobody even know there's something called SGU. And so that fight, but I know why they could get away with that. I know why they could get away with that. And despite they have broken all the original agreements that they had when they came, and still they get away with it. And look, I've been posting a lot on Facebook, Delbert, I've seen a lot of my things on SGU. And the fact is, that's the thing that almost Grenadians are afraid to comment on. Yeah. Because like they give employment and that's it. I know exactly what you say. But getting back to it, you see, I started that organization because I said, if we're going to pressure an organization like Western Union, Grenada alone speaking, they could ignore you. But when we speak as a force of the entire region, and to know you can't ignore this powerful organization because it would impact, we would take action as to how you operate in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Grenada, in Barbados, across the region. Now, I spoke to people in the State Department. I remember having a conversation at a reception, and this white guy was telling me, we'd never allow you guys to unite in the Caribbean. I said, but your country went to us, had a civil war to save your union. Not necessarily to free slaves, but to save your union. And yet you telling me that a few of us small islands in the Caribbean want to get together to at least realize economies of scale, and you're going to stand in our way of doing that? But he said to me clearly, it is not to our benefit. It is only us, if we are prepared to fight and to work with each other, only then we would make progress or move forward. We have gotten to this thing home. Sometimes I remember speaking at the UN and saying that Too much aid gives you AIDS. It destroys your immunity system. You can't do for yourself when you become too dependent on handouts. And people, you know, some of my Caribbean colleagues like, oh my God, why are you going to say that? But it's true. We've gotten to a state where we just can't, we are too dependent on handouts now. We have to learn to cooperate together and work with each other. We have to turn towards each other in the Caribbean. With this thing here, the tourist sector that is going to suffer, no other person could help us more than us ourselves. Grenada should be reaching out to us in the diaspora to build the tourist economy around us now, to reach out to the other Caribbean islands, because I'm telling you that there are people here, no matter how much we could prove that we did not have any serious COVID infection, they were not going to believe us. They're going to believe what they want to. We're going to be subjected to discrimination, just as all Black people all over the world are. And we're the only ones that could do it for ourselves. At least we should be taking the primary role in developing ourselves. And I just want to leave it with you that Grenada, I hope people in Grenada are listening and understanding that you have the richest resources that is hardly used in the diaspora. And we need to organize, you need to recognize us, and we need to build that relationship for all the benefits that could come out of it. You know, one last thing before I leave. The years that St. Lucia made some major leaps, when Compton was the prime minister, he reached out to his best brain power around the world and invite them to come back to St. Lucia and form task force. And they made major contribution towards St. Lucia's leap in the economy. And that's very possible. I could tell you that any one of the persons on the panel here who are invited to the right task force will return and serve their country to the best of their ability. I know that they will do that. I know Delbert would, Ken would, Mr. DaBreo would, I know John Kelly would, any one of the number of people in this country who are invited to the appropriate task force and are treated with dignity and respect, they will be glad to go back, even giving of their own resources to support the country. I know that.
Well, given the way how we treat with many things right now, how we interface with each other right now, virtually and so, they may not necessarily have to come back here physically, but we can set up the systems and we can establish the structures.
Pablo, you trying to keep me out?
Eh? No, I'm not trying to keep you out. You're welcome to come home anytime. I am just saying, you know, that there will be people who, as was mentioned earlier, there are people who may not be in the position where they can just up and come home, but they are willing to contribute. And if you have such a task force, because of the way that we interface and address issues right now virtually, it is very possible for them to contribute as much as someone here to such an initiative. Ambassador Pursoo raised the issue of what he's done on the Caribbean level, and throughout the conversations, what has come out is the need for some kind of organizational framework. Now, that is not going to just happen just so. Brother Delbert already mentioned that this one will have to reach out to that one and reach out to this one, and somebody else will have to reach, you know. And so you get people to have the conversation, and you get people to buy in, you get people to begin to start contributing their own ideas as to how you can make it work, how you can make it better, how you can go ahead in terms of the conversation and moving from the conversation, from the position of a conversation into something constructive and something cohesive. So I am seeing, as I said, this is the initial conversation. This is getting it on the table. A lot of ideas have been shared here this afternoon, and it is something that can be built upon. It is going to be something ongoing. But what I am seeing here is that there's the four of you there, right? And I'm certain that there are people that you interface with, there's people that you network with, who you can have that conversation with. And in the same way that we on the comfort zone here and discussing this, it's the same way that it's possible for you guys among yourselves, even in connection, in collaboration with us, can network with other people where you can have a bigger Zoom meeting that is going to have such a conversation and is going to begin to look at how we can go forward with this thing, because we all agree it is something that has to happen. Now, I just want to say, and I like to put in a little plug for myself and what's going on in my immediate environment. Based on what I said earlier on as to the situation in St. Mark, I have been able to get a group of teachers interested in beginning to do something. So in order to create a presence, an essay competition with COVID-19 as the subject and with different topics was organized. And it was done with different, so you have different groups, right? Different age groups. So you have the 7 to 9-year-olds, they have the topic addressing the COVID-19 issue, the 10 to 12-year-olds, and the 13 to 15-year-olds. We got the principals of the schools in the community to buy into it. There's been submissions. The deadline for the submission have passed, so we've had submissions. It's being assessed now, and different prizes and so are on offer and so on. We're looking at the prospect of establishing an IT center in the community that is going to help to address the issue of access and so that I mentioned earlier on, right? I can tell you significant contributions have come forward from individuals overseas who have contributed to seeing this thing become a success. In fact, there's a lady who brought down something from somebody who made a contribution out there. And when she handed me the envelope, we were having a conversation. I said, well, this is for this project, and this is what's happening. And she immediately went in her bag and pulled out $100 and contributed towards that, you know? So I say this to say that there are these micro things that can happen at the community level, that where you can network with entities to begin to address some of these issues. But if you have a collective of people like you that we can interface with, who can be on top of these things, who can say, well, okay, how can we pull certain resources together to work with one of the budding cooperatives who's looking to get into some level of agro-processing. I see pictures being shared with me. Somebody sent something sometime. I believe it was Dennis Charles who shared something one time. A package of dehydrated mangoes that came from the Philippines or something like that. How do we begin to deal with issues like that, given the fact that tons of our mangoes just fall to the ground every year and, you know, and feed worms? You know, how do we begin to get our diaspora to contribute towards something like that? Be the medium for the marketing and so, because you have the expertise and that kind of thing. How do we begin to work at that level? And is it, you know, is it imperative that you have to have direct government involvement in such an initiative? And what level of government involvement is required to make things like that happen? Because these things go directly to impacting on the lives of rural people. And I can tell you, the people in the rural communities are seriously challenged right now. Yeah. So, comments?
No, listen, I'm just going to say what it, sort of repeat what I said. It's going to take some leadership and cooperation on our part. And as Brother Pursoo said, you know, within the Grenadian diaspora, there's the technical expertise. And if we pull our resources together, we find out that there is the seed money might be available, because we live in a space that we can leverage, you know, what we have to create real investment. But it's going to take leadership, it's going to take cooperation. You know what's crazy about that is that already among ourselves, one, whether we're Grenadians working with other Grenadians in the diaspora, but Grenadians and other Caribbean folks, we already cooperate greatly in the US when we're working, whether we're working for AT&T or we're working for whoever else we're working for. So we cooperate, we work on projects together, and Ken could speak a lot more eloquently on that than I can, and probably Brother Pursoo also. We do that already. So the question is now, how do we transform that to empower ourselves and the people we care the most about? So I think it's something that we have to, I am personally looking for 2021 to be, I can say, you know, we just have to breathe and it will be a better year than 2020. But we can't use 2020 as the benchmark. We have to use something else. But I'm looking for a transformational year in 2021. I'm hoping for greater cooperation among ourselves. I think, Pablo, this topic was key, and the way you sort of all bring it together. And if we can do it, if we can find ways to do it, Ken and I are part of a group, a 4-year-old group called Spice Think Tank, which is a group of Grenadians, professionals who meet regularly. We have not been able to do it so much in 2020 because obviously of the pandemic. But we have, over the last 4 years, have been meeting and discussing issues relevant to Grenada, relevant to development, and all of this. So now that we know Brother Pursoo has his group, here's an opportunity for our group to collaborate with him and see, you know, the different levels of expertise that these both groups possess, and how we can begin to harness those resources and use it to empower our people. So these are things that we're gonna have to double up in 2021 to make up for 2020. No question about it.
And to get down and to get down into the weeds, because all these ideas are really great, but we have a lot of examples. I mean, we have the way Israel and India have used diaspora bonds. We have the examples of how Ethiopia and Ghana are using these bonds to generate activity. And Mr. DaBreo made a very important point very earlier on that I want to go back to, and that's about the have-nots.
Yeah.
There is no economic development if you have 38 or 40% of your people under the poverty line.
Yes.
I mean, you just have to get that up. And I think Pablo was referring to that too, because part of this poverty is having no internet access. So how do you develop, and that big part of your population is not involved in the economic discussion if they can't have access to the knowledge and the education and the other things. It's not just about food. Food too is very important, and food security and a lot of these things we've talked about, but also of getting these people, getting this part of your population active. I remember when I was in Suriname last year, I think, and it was around the Dominica hurricanes, or the year before, it was around the Dominica hurricanes. And there was a discussion with Prime Minister Skerrit, and he said one of the things he was talking about was how, when you have a hurricane, how much it can set back a country. Because families get upturned. Young people who may have been doing well in school now can't do homework because they have to go live with another family member. The house is crowded. That child goes back in school. You understand? So it's all of these things. And so I think there's a lot of issue. Many of them were raised by Mr. Pursoo and Delbert and others. But I think if in Singapore, there is a story about Lee Kuan Yew. There is a story about, well, as many stories about him. But one I always remember was that when he took power, the country was poor and they had very little. And so he said, well, this money can't do everything. It could do one thing. And the one thing was education.
Yeah.
And so his cabinet minister said, no, hold on. So if we do things and we give them education, well, they could just come and overthrow us because it was a very restless time, you know. And he said, yes, well, they could get the education, come back, and they could help build Singapore, or they could overthrow me and build Singapore. But the only thing you were going to get from that was going to be positives. So I think we have to look at some of the platform things we need them to do, the organizing, the education, the lifting out of poverty, or should I say protecting the livelihood of that 40%. But I think, and then after that, we can get into all the weeds, or whether it's bonds, or whether it's investments, or how these things are done.
Well, you know, and listen, the reason I'm excited about being part of this discussion is because it's I'm not looking for like-minded individuals to hang out with. As a matter of fact, I'm looking for folks who can challenge me on many fronts, you know, intellectually and otherwise. I'm excited because the promise that I think this forum proposes is one that I think the region, the Caribbean, and particularly as we talk about Grenada, desperately needs. Grenada needs the expertise that I think so many of you bring to the table. Grenada needs that transformation that I think is possible. You talk about Singapore, and as you said, if Singapore can do it, what are we, chopped liver? We can do it as well. And that I think we have the intellectual capabilities. I think we have what is required to get it done. I think, you know, there's a few things that I think has to be examined. You know, we have to ensure that there is a system of trust. There is no doubt that there are a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of skeptics out there who said, why should I? And if I do, am I at higher risk than normal? I don't want to be at high risk. So they're questioning that. You know, I think, do we have the remedy? I believe we have the remedy. It has to be corralled, though, because there's a lot of wonderful ideas from a lot of different folks, and we have to corral it. You know, are we willing to do what is necessary, I think, to build that infrastructure of leadership? Leadership is absolutely crucial. When I talk about leadership, there's an old saying that says the difference between a moment and a movement is sacrifice. And we need our leaders to make sacrifice. When I say sacrifice, make your money before you get into government. Make your money before you become, you know, I don't want you here trying to fill your pockets with dollars on the backs of poor people.
Yes.
Come with your money before and have a point where you say, enough is enough. I have filled my pockets, they're busting to the seams, and therefore I don't need. So every ounce of my energy, every ounce of my enthusiasm will be given to a society that requires it. It requires decency, that requires respect, that requires a dedication to that human condition that says, I will help my brother and sister without a return for myself. The return that I ask is that it be reinvested into the community. That's what I'm talking about. I have this philosophy that is pretty simple. You treat people with respect and dignity, and you know what? You do not rely on the public sphere to provide you riches.
Yeah.
You know what? Go find a job somewhere. Go invest somewhere. Go do something. Do something. But leave the public sector alone so that we can do work that is greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
So folks, I have to tell you, thank you so much for this opportunity today. I've learned a lot. I have certainly an appreciation for, again, that thing that I hear in my head that tells me Grenadians are amazing, outstanding. Again, this is just another forum that reinforces that notion that Grenadians are exceptional, and that we have a lot to contribute. We just need to corral it. We just need to bring it together. So thanks again.
Not only are there great intelligence in the Canadian community, both at home and abroad, but there is insurmountable passion.
Yes.
You know, when Delbert said that Ken would say, if we breathe in 2021, that's success, the kind of passion I remember him as having. This is a guy that we have worked together in cooperation, of course, not without little friction, but I've always thought of them as people who love their country. And when we are a group of us who have great passion about something, it is not unlikely for us to have difference of opinion, but we respect each other. And as you were saying, Mr. DaBreo, I've always said that public service is ethics institutionalized.
Yeah.
That's what public service is. And, you know, if it's one thing I did, I went down home on my own dime to give workshops to the NDC, I remember, on ethics in government. Mm-hmm. People asked me to co-teach ethics in government with ethics in business. And I said, no, I'm not doing that, because in business, all you have to do is comply with regulations. But in government, if you're not truly ethical, because, you know, when you take government service, it's not about doing things when people are looking at you.
Yeah.
You have to be truly ethical if you are going to be a meaningful public servant. And so I am very but on the more positive front, let me just, before I leave some things with you that I hope would give us some encouragement. During the pandemic, I live on Long Island, so I follow the local news a lot. And I realized that some of the industries that I saw on Long Island that could be done in Grenada, corn. We on Long Island here grow a lot of corn that is used to make vodka. You have a big vodka making industry from the corn. But when the COVID pandemic struck, they converted the vodka industry to a hand sanitizer industry. Yeah. So they used the alcohol from the corn, and they could not even supply enough hand sanitizers. Now, these are not things that we cannot do. We could grow corn all year round in Grenada, right? And perhaps if we have a place where the farmers know that any amount of corn they grow, that industry will take it in. Mm-hmm. Now, these are simple things. I see simple things like pickles, like it's growing like small cucumbers and pickling it and bottling it and distributing it wide, something like that. The hotel business, the restaurant business, there's lots of things. I saw where in Cuba, they were inviting any of the other Caribbean islands, restaurant business in Cuba, to send up once a month, like a 40-foot container of vegetables like cabbage, tomato, and so forth. And these are lots of things we could do. We in the New York, in the diaspora, could also help to expand market opportunities for our country, right? There is lots of us here who are in contact with industries that could do marketing. I speak with Romain in L'Abbé Market on Nostrand Avenue. I know these guys would know him. And he said to me, he wished things could have been better done. That we're not doing things with half the efficiency that we ought to exploit the opportunities here. There's a lot of opportunity. Yeah. And so I want to just make sure that you realize that when we say that the diaspora could make a difference, it's not just talking. We're not just spouting words. We are capable.
We can't supply Brooklyn. Grenada, if Grenada could supply Brooklyn alone, that would change Grenada.
I can't think about it. If we have a vegetable food depot, like the Koreans did, if we have, let's say the government invests in buying a building and sending up all the yams, all the dasheen, all the kalu, all the things, even fish, I know all of us will go there. That place,
Marketing board should be doing this, right?
Yes, expand marketing board to Brooklyn.
And I know, but again, it ties back into the importance of having the right people who understand how these things work. Because I know one of the problems that Romain have is that, for example, when the agreement was put together with JetBlue to fly to Grenada, JetBlue deliberately said they didn't want to carry cargo. So here you are, a small country, all right? You needed to ship agricultural products, high quality agricultural products, and you have an airline coming into your country 5 or 6 days a week, and they're telling you as part of the agreement, even if you're paying them to come, we ain't want to ship your product. About 3 weeks ago, a friend of mine who lives in Framingham, Massachusetts, called me urgently, and she said, "Oh my God, I'm in Whole Foods, and there's Grenadian soursop, $12.99 a pound. Listen to this. No, $12.99 a pound in Whole Foods. All right.
I believe you.
I want in on that action, man. The question is, when are we gonna get some stuff in Erie, Pennsylvania?
Hey, listen, you're on the map, aren't you? Let me ask you, Mr. DaBreo, just to, guys, excuse me for siding, but I see a lot of musical instruments in the background.
Yes.
Yeah, this man is a big time musician.
It's a hobby of mine that I really love and I appreciate. I remember starting as a kid, and I don't know if you any of you know an individual in Guave. His name, he's since passed on, Mr. Raymond Simon. He was
from Florida.
Extraordinary guitar player, and he played in an orchestra in Aruba many years ago, in the 1950s into the 1960s. And I learned from him, and it's been a hobby. So yeah, everybody grew up listening to Bob Marley and Third World and Peter Tosh and all those folks, and I wanted to do that. So I've had the opportunity to acquire a few guitars over the years, and I've taken it. So it's a hobby.
Congratulations!
And you've had the opportunity to play with members of Third World.
Well, the guys invited me to. We opened up for Third World and Steel Pulse in 18 and 19 respectively. 2020 was going to be the Wailers, but because of COVID, we couldn't do that. So.
Yeah. All right, man. That's great. That's great. Congratulations.
Good. You understand? You see what we got here? See what we got here?
DaBreo, I had the opportunity to organize Val Adams when he came to New York.
Oh, really? Nice.
Right.
Yeah, I started Exodus. I came from work and I met about 7 young men in my living room, and I asked them what's going on. They told me that they wanted to start a band. I said, well, why don't you go to your parents? They said, our parents won't believe in us. So my wife was pregnant in the bedroom. I walked in, I said, listen, these guys are here asking for that. She said, well, if they're going to be on the street, if organizing a band would keep them off the street, why not? I said, baby, we only have $2,000 to our name. We had just bought a house. She said, well, take the $2,000. I took the $2,000 and I bought a keyboard for Val and a guitar for Richie. And we started Exodus. And so I know that these kind of efforts could be rewarding. It's not so much the money, because you don't make money out of these things in the early stages, especially. But what happened, you work with people and you see people develop. And there is no greater satisfaction. Right now, my 14-year-old granddaughter is ranked number 25 in the world as a 14-year-old tennis player. Wow. And you know, all the mornings that I went like 6 in the morning in the winter when it's snowing and slushing, I put her in my car and we gone down to the gym, meet with her coach, put in 5 hours a day work. And now she's number 1 on the Eastern Seacoast, number 8 in the nation, and number 25 in the world.
Nice.
And so
congratulations.
Thank you. That is the kind of thing that we do. When we work with people, sometimes we're not looking for positive reward. Of course, we have to pay the mortgage, we have to put food on the table, but the greater benefit. I once told the president of Medgar College, I said, Dr. Jackson, you can't pay me for my love for the people I teach. You can't pay me. you know, yes, I want my salary and I want my annual raise, but you can't pay me for what I feel and give to these kids, you know? And so when I see people like yourself doing this kind of work, I know that anytime you see an artist, this is a man with a good heart. He may not be keen on business savvy or not too business savvy, but I have great respect for artists because I know that their soul is usually engaged. And that's why when I saw the guitars behind your back, I said, before this conversation is open, I have to ask you about it.
Well, I would say this, that
so congratulations.
Thank you. And my career has actually afforded me the opportunity to get some of these instruments. I mean, and my love of business, and I think just the notion of leadership, I think sometimes is underestimated. People will do amazing things for you and with you, regardless of color, creed. It doesn't matter. I think if you could be humble and afford people the opportunity to be part of a vision, something that is extraordinary, that's greater than themselves. I've seen it sometimes I feel like I'm the luckiest guy on the planet because some things happen and I'm thinking, wow, this happened, and you begin to figure it out. If you invite people to be part of something exceptional, typically they're willing to work way harder than the average person to make it a reality.
Yeah. Have any of you seen the Grenada School National School Orchestra?
No,
I haven't seen it.
I got some yesterday. Some people sent me some things. It is very impressive. They have 4 sections. They have violins, a string section. They have a drum section, a percussion section, a horn section. And when you see 56 of our kids play music, which I really, my only wish is that they will play a little more soca, because they play a lot of classic, you know.
Right.
But I'm really impressed with what I saw, and it speaks to the potential. We have tremendous, and you see these young kids, 12, 13, 14, 15, you see them play violin, it's like you would think you're listening to a professional group. And so I think that there's a lot for us to work with. We should be encouraged that we have not only a beautiful country, but we have a country with very, very pleasant potential, things that we could give our lives a lot of satisfaction. And so I'm always honored to be not only a part of this discussion, but to roll up my sleeves and get involved in work that would help keep our country's head above water. And I may jump off any moment now, but I want to say thanks to every one of you guys. And Mr. Paul, feel free to call me anytime you wish to. You have my home number, my WhatsApp number.
WhatsApp, yes.
Yeah, you got everything about me. You don't know my mother's name, but you know a lot about me. But guys, I hope you all had a very pleasant New Year.
Yeah.
And I wish you guys stay safe.
And same here, guys. Stay safe. All the best.
Yeah. And Delbert, let's I'll circulate more information about the Caribbean Diaspora United Incorporated. And we are eager for collaborations, because that's how we strengthen ourselves too. We have a 20-something member executive, and we have some serious programs. We have a social networking program where we participated in making demands for social justice in this country. We are working with African Americans to struggle for better social justice situation. We have an education committee that, Raphael, we did something similarly. We asked people in our immediate circle to write essays about the various Caribbean islands and what it means to them. A young lady about 10 years old, she won the prize for writing about Barbados, about what, her mother is from Barbados and what the country means to her. So we're doing this thing. We just had a 5K a virtual 5K where people could walk in Atlanta, send in their records in California, send in the pictures of what they did. And we have a cultural committee, and we are organizing. Right now we're planning to organize a cultural extravaganza and a sports meet among the diaspora here. I spoke with what's his name, the chairman of the Carnival Committee, Gypsy, and we are thinking about the kind of things to organize a Caribbean caravan to come through the United States, at least the Eastern Seacoast, once a year. Once this COVID thing has happened, we're putting together the promoters, because we believe that linkages with the island is very important, and that we could support the Caribbean islands, and the things that the Caribbean islands could provide us, nostalgic things that we need, that would bring betterment and happiness to our lives. So I want you to know that we here in the diaspora may not be ready to do it because the conduit isn't built yet to channel our support. But we are appreciative of our country, and we stand ready to help whenever the opportunity presents itself. We also are prepared to work in building that conduit that I spoke about.
Yeah.
So guys, stay safe. Enjoy 2021.
Great seeing you after all these years.
Yes, same here, same here. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But you know what? I always tell people, time nor space does not affect my affection for good things.
Yes.
And good people.
Same here.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, all the best.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Pablo, this was a great program to start off the year, man. I don't know if we're going to be able to top it off, you know?
Well, I expect us to be able to top it off, because this is going to be an ongoing something. And as it is now, yes, we've laid the foundation, but as you very well know, when you go into build a structure, the foundation, as significant as it is not the really attractive component of the project.
Yeah, right? It never is. It never is.
Right. You know, but it is critical. It is very critical to you know, to the project itself. But so we've started with the foundation, but it's when we begin to put the uprights and so on, and when the structure is up, then we'll be able to look at it and admire the handiwork, you know, that has gone into it. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping that something seriously has started here, and I'm banking on you guys to, you know, to
I agree.
to take it to the next level, because as you rightly indicated, it's going to take you reaching out to Susan and Sandra and John and Peter and you know, Mr. Pursoo doing a similar thing, and Ken doing a similar thing, and Mr. DaBreo doing a similar thing, and so on and so forth, in order to get to where we want to go to. And I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
You know?
Thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Because as was said, you know, it brings a special feeling, a special sense of belonging when one is associated with something. I don't remember which one that used the term, something that is bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
I wanted to touch on that, because that was a phrase that my mother used to always use for me. She was like, you have to do something that's bigger than yourself, and wherever you go, make sure you live it better than live it. When you live, it should be better than when you got there, you know. So you know, I remember that phrase growing up, man.
This is what I am feeling here now, that to be, you know, being involved with something that is so much bigger than me, you know, and I'm really happy to be part of it, and I'm really happy and thankful that John Kelly's and Jim FM have afforded me the opportunity to be part of that process and that initiative right now.
Okay.
So.
All right, gentlemen, I got to take off, but again, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes,
All right.
Nice
And
meeting you.
we'll be in
Nice
touch. We'll be in touch for sure. I want to connect with everybody, so we'll be in touch.
Definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you again.
Will do. Okay,
right.
brother. Yeah. So that's a wrap this evening on the comfort zone. It's the first episode, the first edition for 2021, and it was really a pleasure being able to get some of our professional people in the US diaspora to participate in the first conversation of how do we create how do we establish a concrete approach for the involvement of our diaspora in our domestic economy. And there's been many ideas that's been shared, and we look forward to taking it to the next level. So thank you to all those who joined us this evening, this afternoon. Thank you to viewers and listeners, those of you who, have been with us from last year. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you to Brother John for providing us with that platform. And thank you to, I believe, someone else is sitting in for him, probably his daughter or somebody is sitting in for him presently at this point in time. That usually happens. Yes, okay, yep, she's right there. Okay, thank you, my dear. You're always there. And it's not the first time that you are sitting in for your dad. And I really do appreciate, the contribution that you make to enabling and facilitating such a conversation. So that puts a wrap on the comfort zone for the 2nd of January, the 21st edition of the comfort zone in 2021, the first